Jayhawks and the Red Raiders.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Skinner is the motion man. The receiver screen for Arnold. Gets a block on the edge and a burst. Down the far sideline. The cutback at the 20. And he's going to take it to the house. Touchdown, Jayhawks.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Johnson steps up, has room to run, fakes the throw, wants to move, touchdown, Avery Johnson!
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Dart fires wide open, pre-scored, touchdown Rebels!
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Quick to McMillan. Gonna throw it. Back to the quarterback. How about that? McMillan throws it to Michael Wiley for the touchdown.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Here's Gordon again. Top cut in the hole. Bust it to the outside. And Gordon diving for the end zone. Touchdown, Oklahoma State.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on 365 Sports, just off of MLK, Waco, Texas. 365 Sports, coast to coast, though, with our audience and viewership and listeners. We do appreciate you every single day, along with the sponsors who bring this to you, too. Paul Catalina is to my left, Craig Smoak to my right. Garrett Ross is here, and finally, back from getting over his rampage in Las Vegas, Emery Winter is back in studio.
I was worried we may not see him again. I thought it was going to be problematic, but he finally, got a couple of hot and cold showers and,
Cold?
Wake himself up.
Yeah.
You turn him on and off, and I think he's fine now.
Yeah, he looks good. And here, next week on February the 20th, college football's playoff format could be decided. It's supposed to be a vote. Ross Dellinger is going to join us today at 3:30. He knocked down like 3 big stories yesterday, including one at the end of the day when it comes to Washington State President Kirk Schultz, who is basically saying we don't need, or we should not feel like we should be regulated, actually relegated. It's not regulated. Relegated, that's Ross's misspelling. Relegated by no fault of our own.
Okay, he's almost right here. It is not completely the fault of Washington State and Oregon State that they're in the spot that they're in. But to say that when for 2 years you weren't getting a TV deal done, that neither one of you stood up and said, hey guys, let's take the best available deal. I don't think we're going to get $50 million. Or, hey, Commissioner Kliavkov, like, what are you really hearing out here and what's your direction? It's not no fault of their own. Like, they bear some responsibility in the collapse of the Pac-12. And look, they fought to keep the Pac-12 together because that was the best for them. But clearly whatever they did didn't work. So no fault of our own is a stretch to the fact that
they were a partner in the crime.
Yeah, they're a partner in it.
Yeah.
Now, were they the victims of it based on everybody else? Yes, they were. But like to say that like, oh, we're just innocent victims in this, that leaves out their responsibility in my opinion.
Yeah, it does. I mean, this is a multifaceted kind of quote, though. I mean, when talking about the whole big picture of Washington State and Oregon State, I mean, to y'all's point on it's not our fault, no fault of our own. I do think the victim card's being played quite a bit by those two, just as far as like, we're just innocent bystanders that had nothing to do with any of this. And so please, everybody, treat us as like we're victims and help us out in all of that. And there's a little bit of an element of that. I do get that from some of the fan bases of that they should be treated like they're victims in all of this. And I guess in some ways they are, the same ways that multiple Big 12 schools were victims when Oklahoma and Texas left, and multiple Pac schools, I guess, that could have been had it stayed together more than it did. But eventually it was just those two. They could have had some company with Cal and Stanford, but we know that they didn't get that call like everybody else. So I can see where they're coming from, where it's just those two left over, as opposed to the way other conferences have changed and how that's a different situation than what we've seen elsewhere. And therefore makes you feel like, man, we really are like, we got us two and us two alone got screwed over and left to die. But we're in Big 12 country, so we know how that is and how that can be. And we've seen it happen multiple times. And so I just don't have that like bleeding heart for them, like I guess they have for themselves, or how some others have for them. But I mean, I do feel terrible for the situation that they're in, but I don't, to I guess the overall point, feel like everybody should stop down to make sure that Washington State and Oregon State are okay. But I do want them to be okay, but I just don't think that that's the concern of everybody. However, because of the situation itself, Kirk Schultz doesn't have to do a damn thing right now. He doesn't have to help pass the new playoff format. All he has to do, or what mostly he has to do, is to worry about the good of Washington State, just like Oregon State has to watch out for the best possibilities for Oregon State and the best opportunities for Oregon State. And so for those two, they're still going through that process. And for right now, they've got an ace card that can hold up pretty much everything, and they're using it. And if you were in their shoes, wouldn't you use it too? Or would you just let everybody, you know what, like we can hold up everything and maybe work this into something that benefits us even greater overall than the situation we're in right now, like a conference invite somewhere or a guarantee of some sort that you're going to have a place. And so that's what he's doing, is he's using that weapon that they have with the playoff to basically bring things to a halt and try to do what he can to ensure that on the other end of this, that Washington State and Oregon State are okay and secure and have a place at whatever kind of a table is available to them. So, yeah, I mean, they're not without fault. He was one of the most vocal people during the process.
Yes,
he was Mr. Pro Pac-12, and that's why, coming from him, no offense to Washington State fans, but it's like, dude, you were one of the most talkative people in favor of the Pac-12 deal, and that it was getting done, and that all this
how positive it looked.
Yeah, and that all this other stuff was nonsense, and it's like, okay, and then in the end we see what happened. And granted, the way he was talking at times, that's what his reality was. You couldn't have predicted that Washington and Oregon were going to bolt, but then again, you kind of could, because it was always out there that if the Big Ten came calling, those teams were probably gone. Now, you didn't foresee every single move, but the Big 12 made their desires no secret whatsoever. So the Wolves were at the gate, and people like him and a few others tried to pretend like that was just not even a possibility. And I get it when you're being told a certain type of information and you believe that information, but I think a lot of lessons were learned by a lot of different parties. They are now in control of the Pac-12 assets. They've got the playoff vote that they're stopping right now because, everybody else, every report's wanting the move to occur by now and move to that new format. But Schultz is in the way of that. Schultz also has all the Pac-12 network assets and the possibility of these 2 years to figure out what they want to do. So he has time on his hands. And so, that comment's a little funny considering who it comes from. But at the same time, that's a person right now that's right there at the center of a lot of the topics going on in college football when it comes to the playoff and the future and conferences and things like that. So, it's going to be very interesting to see what sort of the next steps are. And with Kirk Schultz and the Oregon State side of things, how they manage all of this.
Kirk Schultz proposal, this is from Ross Dellinger. Again, he'll join us in 20 minutes. Delay the vote for the college football playoff, moving from a 6-6 playoff format to 5-7. We've documented that many times. But he shot down the idea that his vote is tied to the granting of his proposal and indicated Washington State would be better off with the 5-7 model as it is right now because it has more at-large spots. That, to me, I don't know how that would make sense.
Well, look, I mean, he says they're not tied together because now he's pressed to, like, get this done because now it's nut cutting time, right? Like, they're They're to the point where they have to make a decision. So he's
they have to make a decision because they've only got a couple of years to figure out what the heck is going to look like on the other side of all this.
Yeah, because we have, although not official and a lot of work to be done, the ESPN 7.8 billion. Yeah, they need them. This is not just, you can't do this a week before.
No, I'm saying more on the format is for 2 more years. Yeah. That's it. They don't have.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they need to get that set.
Right.
Yeah, so they're down to the point where they can't push this anymore and like politic it, and he's not going to do himself any favors if he pushes it again.
I still don't. Here's the thing I don't understand. Why don't again? This comes down to me. Maybe I'm just not very smart. If you're a conference champion, you get in. If you're a part of the Autonomy 5, and for at least the next couple of years, the Pac-12 is protected. I still don't know why anybody would vote to have less conference champions that would be automatic. Unless you're Big Ten or the SEC. Why would the ACC do that? Why would the Big 12 do that? Why would the Pac-2 do that? Why would a Group of 5 team do that?
Well, I mean, look, if you only have to worry about Washington State and Oregon State being in that highest, ranked 5 champions, which is the rule, then, it's one of those things like you're going to roll the dice.
How often are Washington State, and with all due respect, and Oregon State going to be one of the highest ranked conference championship winners? Well, because they're going to, what's going to be held against them? Who they're playing? Well, who are you playing?
But they're not here's the thing. They're not, but also they're betting on getting more at-large spots. So the best thing for the conferences, Smokey, is to have more at-large spots because that's the better shot of them getting in, especially given the fact what we just saw when it comes down to you versus the SEC, it's double birds to you, the SEC's going in. So you have to vote for any system that gives you the better opportunity to get multiple teams in. 5-7 gives them that. If it's 6-6, it doesn't.
But if they're a conference champion and the Pac-2 ends up being a conference that sticks as
among they're not the highest ranked though.
Yeah,
who's going to rank them amongst the highest?
Well, if they're not if they're not going to be in for being the highest ranked conference champion, what makes us think they're going to be an at-large team?
They probably won't, but that's still
so either way they're screwed.
Yes, either way they're probably screwed. But here's the thing: if it's 6-6 and you take the highest 6th-ranked conference champions, you take the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC.
Group of 5.
And then you have a group of 5 and a group of 5 because then somebody else gets in, like the Sun Belt. They don't want that. So then it's not just the American.
I thought it was one group of 5.
No, it's the highest 6 conference champions.
Okay.
So
it's not like you win the Pac-12, you're in the playoff automatically.
I mean that's obvious because the ACC champion.
When it was 5 power conferences, then it was going to be one group of 5. But when there's only 4 complete power conferences, now 2 group of 5. And they don't want that. Do you honestly want, and look, that doesn't mean that it's fair or not fair because we know fair went out the window a long time ago in college football. But if you're telling me the ACC would vote 6-6 because they're going to get their champion, well, 6-6 means that their second best team may not get in because then Troy has to get in.
Yeah, I still think I would rather have the automatic berth. At least I know one team is getting in, but in the case of the Pac-2, we don't know their future by 2026, and so maybe there's just something I'm missing there. All right, now, so that's going to be a vote next week.
Do I need to get a whiteboard out?
I'm confused.
You're not. I'm just telling you, if you can get in as a conference champion, and you might be left out as an at-large berth because I would think, they're going to use all those things they use against everybody else if you're not the Big Ten or the SEC. So what makes you think Washington State, Oregon State are going to be ranked high enough in the end to get an at-large berth? I don't think they will.
Well, that's why.
It's going to be 2 or 3 teams SEC, 2 or 3 teams Big Ten, 4 other conference champions, and then it's a lottery.
But considering that they're essentially a 2-team conference, there's a good shot that they're not going to be the 6th best ranked team. So being a 7th for an at-large bid in most years gives them a better shot right now.
Yeah, I know everyone. Some of you are more confused, or maybe I confused it even more. I'm just trying to be honest as a fan here, just looking at why you would not want the easiest route to be included in the conference playoff. And I can be convinced. It's not like I'm looking like rocket science here. To me, looking at it that way, because Oregon State and Washington State, what is their non-conference schedule going to look like? Both of them are going to continue the rivalries with Oregon and Washington. But other than that, who are they going to play? Mostly Mountain West and others. And
well,
so
that was the whole alliance that was talked about and announced
exactly.
was they're going to play the Mountain West. Yes.
And so that will be used against them, not for them. Well, who are you playing? We've seen that against autonomy.
Here's from Ross's
5
article.
schools.
Schultz acknowledged that it behooves the Pac-12 to operate under a playoff format that has more at-large spots because of a policy change the commissioners adopted at a meeting in November. The change requires a conference to have at least 8 members to qualify for one of the automatic qualifying spots in the expanded 12-team playoff. So,
well, maybe they will be at 8 before 2026. Maybe they'll be able to gain something. I don't know what it would be. That doesn't mean they have to accept them as a Power 5 conference. But yeah, I get that. They have work to do.
Here's from Ross's article. If you look ahead, clearly more at-large bids are going to be advantageous to the Pac-12, given that we no longer have status as an automatic qualifier. So that's what we were talking about. It's not like the Pac-12 champ just automatically they got that. So I know what you're saying, though. How do you figure you're going to get that at-large spot? Because it's probably going to the SEC team with 3 losses. I get what you're saying, but here's Schultz himself in this Ross Dellinger article. If you look ahead, clearly more at-large bids are going to be advantageous to the Pac-12, given that we no longer have status as an AQ. In the long run, that's where we need to be. No doubt in our mind that if you look at what's best for our schools, the 5+7 and more at-large spots is clearly going to be better.
Then why hasn't it been passed?
Because he's trying to make sure
it up.
He's holding it up, and he's holding it up as long as he can until he gets the other guarantees that he wants. But once again, if you keep the 6+6, you're going to cut off your nose to spite your face, because there's a very good chance that in 2 years you're more likely not going to have 6 other teams join you before the end of it, and you're probably not going to have 6 other teams join you.
I get that,
at
but
all.
You realize how much change has happened with conferences in the last couple of 2 or 3 summers?
But they need to. If you're Washington State and Oregon State, you need to start betting with the house and not against it anymore, because you've already out in the cold because of this.
But yet
and
again,
if you vote for the top 6,
he has been not allowing it to happen.
Yeah, but if you vote for 6+6, then you're telling the Sun Belt's going to be like, "Hey, Kirk Schultz, come here to the island of cocaine and BJ's because we owe you all that." I mean, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, he risks pissing a lot of influential people off, and after these couple years are over, and then, hey guys, and he gets the cold shoulder, and Oregon State and Washington State are in a much worse place because they no longer have the sway of these 2 years of probation, basically. And now he's pissed everyone off because he's held up the playoff that everybody wants to pass and wants to have happen and wants to move forward with. So he's got leverage, but he only has a certain amount that he has to be mindful of that doesn't come back to bite him in the ass if he doesn't play it the right way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. No, I get that part. I'm just saying, I cocaine and PJ.
I mean,
a lot of it depends on whether Oregon State and Washington State end up merging with anybody else to create their own conference, and that would be considered a Group of 5 conference too, which is that isn't competing against more conferences for that spot than you would be if you were an at-large. Yeah. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Scotty B, Oregon State, Washington State need to hope to join the ACC if the ACC loses teams. Also, the ACC has an invite to Oregon State, has to invite Oregon State and Washington State. All right, so there we are with that. A couple of other notes. Ross will join us at 3:30. Yesterday evening, Grayson Grundhaver had this. A high school running back out of Oklahoma, Caden Knighton, committed to Baylor. He's been injured his junior year, had 20-something hundred yards his sophomore year, runs very well. He's a 2-time state champion in the 100 meters. Here's Keenan Hall again, the Baylor running backs coach, who, remember, had Ricky Stewart and Demetrius Brisbane at SMU are committed. Now Brisbane at Baylor and Stewart's still out there. But Keenan Hall seems to be the alpha right now when it comes to recruiting. Not that others aren't doing it when it comes to recruiting, and seems to have kind of a magic wand when it comes to getting talent at skill positions.
It's a nice pickup. We'll learn more about him. I think he's just recruiting well. I don't think there's anything magic to it. I think that, he's obviously gifted at what he does and has great relationships. But, he's just given them a bit of a boost or juice in recruiting that they really didn't have there for a little while. They had a small class, so there wasn't a lot of opportunities to make huge splashes. And then They've attacked the transfer portal. I do think, though, that they're looking at another double digit. Is that going to be the norm for schools like that you're going to have to take like 12 guys every year? Because I don't know that that's good. And that also means you're
12
really,
because of the transfer portal?
Yeah, or because of the transfer portal. But in Baylor's case, it's because they don't have the right players. Like, I mean, they didn't lose a bunch of guys, and they're bringing on guys because they need to improve in a lot of areas. So I just wonder if, like, is every year you're going to expect them to have like 10 plus guys in the transfer portal, and just what does that mean in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess some years it could be that they're losing guys to the transfer portal. Other years, just talent's not panning out. I don't know, but I just don't know that if every year you're going and getting double-digit guys, that's really a healthy sign of your roster and your ability to retain talent. You know what I mean? And so these last 2 years, they've had to take, or they're going to take 10-plus players, and I wonder if that's going to be kind of the average across the country, or if that's unique to smaller schools because it's harder.
See a trend, yeah.
Right, but that's what I'm wondering about, and wondering what we see moving forward. So, yeah, it's a nice pickup. Obviously, a very long way to go for 2025, but they've got some nice momentum coming off of signing day and with the 2025 class, so that seems like a very solid pickup, and Keenan Hall has definitely already been paying dividends since his hire just a couple of months ago, I guess it was.
So last night there was a town hall meeting. Chris Del Conte, the AD at Texas, on here's a couple of 3 or 4 things that Chip Brown put up on his feed. One, that Texas will play. He was asked about, now I want you to read this. He was asked if Texas will play any Big 12 teams in football going forward. He said it will depend on if SEC plays an 8 or 9 game schedule. Okay, I get that. But then here is his comment. Adding it might come down to if any Big 12 schools would be willing to play in Austin as opposed to any kind of home and home. So go kiss the ring twice.
Not surprised. Look, that's a very, but he's already like,
and he can say that.
Not that Texas is already like, but that's a very SEC thing though. That's
exactly right. Yep.
There's a lot of schools that do that. Like, hey, let's call up Kentucky and see if they want to play. And they're like, we'll play one. You know, we got one opening. And like, when do you want to do the return trip? How about 17 years from now?
Yeah.
You know, like that's kind of how it goes. And Florida has been that for a long time. Like they could say, yeah, well, you can come here, but we won't go there. And part of it is because they don't like going to a lot of these places. If you have 108,000-seat stadium,
there's only a handful of people that do that.
Yeah, but like
that have 100,000.
But like Michigan, Ohio State are kind of the same way.
Right.
Like
I can see
they
that.
have the 108,000-seat stadium. They're like, well, we don't want to go and take a gate that's 50,000 seats maximum because then in their mind they're taking a loss, even though
Yeah, just
whatever.
like forever and ever, they had that late terrible non-conference game sometime in November, and it was just basically, okay, well, they're playing Georgia Southern or whoever it might be.
All right, so Kyle Field, 102, Tiger Stadium, 102, Neyland, 101, DKR, 100, Bryant Denny, 100, Sanford and Georgia, 92. So there's a handful of schools that are 92 or more that they're going to be in the same conference with. So why are you going to go to Waco in front of 35,000 people if you don't have to? Now, I understand you might do that for historical purposes, and that Texas schools might be a different consideration because you do want to go to Lubbock every once in a while, but yeah, you don't want to do it. The whole purpose of leaving was to leave. They're not leaving to play Big 12 schools a bunch. I mean, they're leaving to go play a new schedule that's more exciting for them and a more high profile. So
that's going to be the case no matter who they play in non-conference, although they have Michigan among others.
So I don't know why he would be hurrying to go to Ames again. I mean, I think that'll all come in due time, but honestly, I mean, I get the perspective of like the Big 12 fan looking at that and like, oh, arrogant Texas. But you know what? If I was a Texas fan, I'd be like, right on, brother. Yeah, I don't want to go to those other places if we don't have to do it on a regular basis. Yeah, I want to do something new and check out these new places. And look, if there's an opportunity to play TCU or play Baylor or play Texas Tech, I think that will all come in time. But we don't have to go to their places. Like, we can leverage our power, and I know it comes across as arrogance to people who don't get to benefit from that. And it is to some extent, there's no doubt, but at the same time, that's the position you put yourself in
which is why I said from the beginning, which they can say that.
Right.
So you're just confirming what I said, but it's kind of like, we are leaving you. You're right. We don't need you anymore, and if you want us, then you got to play us twice at home. Who among the Big 12 will do that?
No.
Well, I would hope nobody.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then to me, it's not even a topic, but it's something to pretty cool. And they're playing, listen, they had Alabama this year, Michigan next year, and others in the future. They always have meat, a nice, meaty, really good, usually home-and-home series with somebody in the non-conference.
And there is, especially going forward where, TV days are going to be good. Like they're going to play a Sun Belt or a Mountain West team or somebody at home. They're going to, when the SEC goes to 9 games, because ESPN's going to say, guys, please stop this.
Well, there's actually news on that today, but I'll get to that in a second.
So when the SEC goes to 9 games, then that takes, one of those non-cons out. They'll have probably every year or so a game like Michigan or something like that comes across because it's a big TV thing. And then they'll have some middle-of-the-road team that they won't have to go on the road very much outside the conference, like once in a while. But most of their non-conference games will be at home.
Yeah, I just think if you're a Big 12 team, you don't agree to that. You don't agree to playing Texas at Austin and then not getting a return trip. So it's as simple as that for me. That's what I would kind of have as a league mandate. Not every school is going to be able to choose what they want to do, but I would just think Oklahoma State or Iowa State or TCU would have enough self-respect, everybody really, to not agree to a deal like that. So if that's the carrot he's dangling, it's like, oh, we'll play you, but only if you play here twice, then I think that you can go find some other teams to play. And so, yeah, hopefully nobody agrees to that, but you never know how big the payday is or just the want to do that, the want for I don't think a Tech would agree to that, but let's just say they want to get that spotlight of being in Austin or playing Texas again. I don't know. I would just hope that that's not something that anybody caves to because, you're at least getting – if you're going to play 2 in Austin, you better be playing 1 somewhere on the road. I'm not doing a 2-0 type of an agreement, but a 2-1, I could see some teams potentially agreeing to something like that to bring Texas to their stadium one time, especially if there's some historical aspects to it. But, yeah, I think that is going to take some time to play out, just the whole Big 12 and playing Texas and Oklahoma. And I'm interested to see how that works because, there's bridges that are burned a little bit, but it's not like you can't repair them in some way, shape, or form.
They have Michigan, Ohio State, then Michigan over the next 4 years. They always play an alpha most every year, and then they'll play like UL Monroe or someone like that. Out of the Mountain West or somewhere else, too. All right, when we come back.
So, Chris Del Conte also said that speaking of the 9 conference games.
Go ahead. Put that up there, Garrett, the one about the 9 conference games. Go ahead, Craig.
That the 2026 season would likely be when the SEC starts to play the 2026 season, I guess, is when Texas, or he mentioned that Texas would probably play, or SEC would have a 9-game conference schedule. It was basically what the message was at that same talk. So I'll try to track down that tweet. But that's, for everybody who's been wondering when they might make that move, it sounds like.
Which is in conjunction with the college football playoff changing.
Yeah, so that would be the timeline you're looking at for the SEC to join a bunch of others in playing 9 conference games, which would be good to see. But who knows what 2026 looks like at that point.
And A&M in Texas every year, he mentioned that, also hoping to move the game back to Thursday of Thanksgiving week, which was a tradition forever and ever. When we come back, Ross Dellinger had many stories yesterday throughout college football, and a lot of them we just discussed in the first 30 minutes. Kevin Flaherty from 247 and also Rob Dauster, both college football writers, will join us today at 4 and 5, and this is 365 Sports. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Shop big savings during the Ram Truck Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Ram 1500 is the most luxurious and technologically advanced Ram 1500 ever. There's a great selection on the lot and ready for immediate delivery. Ram Truck Month sales event is a winner at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
By the way, we are aware of the story at the Kansas City Chiefs victory parade that seems like this is more often the story than not. 1 person killed, 9 injured, shots fired at the end of the parade in Kansas City. And we'll continue to monitor that and bring you updates as we get them too. Ross Dellinger was a busy man, not just yesterday, but always with all the stuff going on in college football. Ross, thank you very much for your time. So I'm the guy that's in the room that doesn't always understand things quite correctly. Kirk Schultz has been wanting to avoid the 5 and 7. It appears, based on your article, that that's about to change because of who they'll be in 2 years. Does he think that 5-7 is better for Washington State than 6 and 6? And if that's the case, why?
Yeah, well, it can get a little confusing, certainly, and a lot of this was supposed to happen weeks, if not even months ago. But you're right, Kirk and the Pac-12 in general have been sort of delaying it. So, college football playoff is trying to move, from a 6+6 12-team format to a 5+7. In order to do that, you got to have the unanimous support from the board, and the Pac-12 is still on the board. It's still a member for 2 more years at least. And Kirk can hold up that vote, and he has delayed it. He has delayed the move from 6+6 to 5+7 in order to present a proposal next week to the board that basically seeks for the Pac-12 to be considered a Power 5 conference and get Power 5 revenue and voting rights for the foreseeable future. Now, he says the two things are related, that he's not tying his vote to the granting of his proposal. But you could see that part of the delay was tied probably to this proposal. But as you mentioned, it actually behooves the Pac-12 to vote for the 5% because they need more at-large spots, because in November, commissioners approved a new policy where conferences must have at least 8 members in order to get an automatic qualifier, which would eliminate the Pac-12 since they have 2 members for next year and probably the next. So I think ultimately what's going to happen is he's going to present this proposal at the meeting next week of the Board of Managers. It is probably, if it's not going to be rejected there, then it's probably going to be rejected at some point. I don't imagine there's going to be any long-term guarantees for the Pac-12 to be considered Power 5. And then he's going to have to decide, Kirk Schulz, if he's going to do one of 3 things. He's going to vote for the 5-7 and it'll pass. And this year we'll have 5 automatic qualifiers and 7 at large. Or he's going to vote against it and we'll stay at 6 and 6 AQs and 6 at large for the next 2 years. Or the third option is he could abstain from voting. And if he does that, then the motion will pass 10-0-1. So that's kind of what's going on right now with that issue.
Ross, one quote from your column stood out to us, and we talked about it earlier, which was, "We are here through no fault of our own," which is only partially true in that Washington State was as big a part of trying to keep the Pac-12 together and saying that everything was fine as anyone. So do you think that part of it will fall on deaf ears when he's talking to the rest of the conferences, when he's like, look, this isn't our fault? Like, I don't know if it's that. It sucks that it happened to you, but you had a part in it.
For sure. And, I think every member of the Pac-12 board of presidents, which includes Kirk, for a while Kirk was the chair, I believe, probably has some kind of fault in the Pac-12 implosion, and so I think there's you could definitely see that, right? You could definitely say that is true. I think the way the Washington State and Oregon State look at it is that people, and I should say Scott Barnes, the Oregon State athletic director, did say this to me a few months ago, and I quoted him in the story, but the people in the CFP room, in the commissioner room, they're responsible is how they view it. Whether you agree with that or not, they say that they're responsible for the implosion of the Pac-12 because they came and got those teams. And that's how they view it.
Ross, was there much tussling or back and forth when it came to the SMU revenue distribution? It appears that that's been settled now at this point, but how much of a hassle or back and forth was there in regards to that?
Well, there's been quite a tussle the last few months of that. It really kind of came up in a November commissioner meeting. I think there was, to explain it to the listeners, basically Power 5 teams, they get $6 million each from the CFP, each Power 5 school. That's the distribution. Each group of 5 school gets $1 million. Well, SMU is moving from a group of 5, the American, to a Power 5, the ACC, but yet some commissioners did not want to give them the full share. There was not support, and it does take unanimity. Again, that word unanimity, it does take unanimity in order to for any revenue distribution item like that one, So there wasn't unanimity. And so after a few months, there was, I think, some tussling back and forth until Jim Phillips did come up with what has been kind of termed a compromise. And so SMU will get 50% of the Power 5 distribution, so around $3 million, 2.5 or $3 million a year for the first year in the ACC, and they'll get 75% of a Power 5 cut in the second year, so roughly 3.5 or so million. And so they'll get around 7 to 7.5 million instead of the 12 over the 2 years. Basically, is what compromise was reached.
Ross, when you also had the story, what the SEC and the Big Ten are going to do with this advisory board or whatever. When you spoke to Brett Yormark of the Big 12 and also with Jim Phillips, they both publicly and to you said they have faith that the SEC and the Big Ten are working, I guess, for what might be in the best interest of everybody. Do you think they believe that? And does Jim Phillips believe anybody after the alliance blew up that he thought was so good?
Well, it is a time and an era in college athletics where it's tough to believe anything, in the trust. I think the trust in the college football playoff commissioner room is a trust that is probably maybe not at an all-time low. That may have been last year, but it's at a low. There's definitely an issue with the trust among commissioners, given realignment in all the things that you have mentioned. All I can do is take what they say, right? Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips, they say that they do trust what Tony Petitti of the Big Ten and Greg Sankey of the SEC are saying, and they believe they're not going to run off together and do something, that they're going to try to create truly a solution, a model that good for everybody, or at least those who can afford it, which you would think is at least the Power 5 at the very least, and maybe the Group of 5. It just kind of depends.
Ross, Brett Yormark appears, pushing all the chips in the middle in basketball, and they have it. I guess it just seems from the outside looking in like the Big 12 has other things moving in case the Big 2 do decide you guys aren't worth our time anymore and we're leaving. We'll take from you what we want, but just move on and leave us alone. And it doesn't feel like the ACC's doing that at all, especially given the fact that they've got a team that wants to leave so badly right now, they're willing to pay a ton of money to do it.
Well, for sure, right? These two leagues, I think, are in, I would say, very different situations. The Big 12 is a league where top to bottom, there's not necessarily any big football power, but there's really no kind of small, school with like a Vanderbilt or Northwestern or something like that. So they bring certainly a lot of parity. It feels like the Big 12 does, and all the members seem genuinely happy, to be in that league. That's not the case with the ACC, right? That the ACC is, man, it's just made up of very different programs. And I think there's a lot more like-minded in the Big 12 and similarly resourced in the Big 12 as opposed to the ACC, where you have, 5 or 6 smaller private programs and you have 3 or 4 big brands. And that's led to the situation that we see today, where you do have a big brand of Florida State and maybe some others eventually that are looking to leave the league. And so these two leagues, they're not necessarily in the same boat, so to speak.
Ross, you mentioned the word that stuck out to me at least was inevitable when it comes to the expansion of the NCAA tournament. And you point out in the article, much the way the SEC and Big Ten want to flex and get more of the pie in football, then you can understand the Big 12 and ACC wanting to maximize their brands in basketball. I know you're a writer, so you use certain words for a reason, but how inevitable do you feel like NCAA basketball tournament expansion is, and what kind of a timeline roughly do you think that we're talking about here? Is that something that they can, kind of like the new playoff, get done in a hurry, or is that something that's going to take and be a longer process, you think?
Yeah, can't be too long these days. I think that, right now in college athletics, the Power Four, I guess, soon enough, the Power Four, or even the Power Two to a degree, the SEC and Big Ten, are controlling a lot of the decisions. And those leagues want a bigger tournament. I know that a lot of fans disagree with that, and I can understand that. But they believe that their teams deserve more spots. And whether that's eliminating AQs, which could really be a political disaster, and would not go over very well, I wouldn't think. So I think the most likely probably is adding at-large spots. And I don't know how quickly you can do that, but I'm going to guess within the next 2 or 3 years, we will see a change in the NCAA tournament, because that's what the major leagues want. And the major league, whatever the major leagues and major conferences want, they get, because they have the value, they have the revenue, and they share that revenue with everybody else in the NCAA. About 95, maybe 92% of the NCAA relies on the major conferences and their value that they bring, specifically to the NCAA tournament, and to a degree the CFP as well. So they want it, and I think there's probably, like I said, within the next couple of years, I would imagine that we're going to see changes to the basketball tournament that, in all likelihood, includes just overall expansion and the addition of at-large spots.
Ross, last time we had you on, and again, thanks for your time. Anytime we can get you. You did have a bucket full yesterday, but last time we had you on, we were discussing this possible lawsuit or the injunction, Tennessee against the NCAA, NIL, the transfer portal, the college football playoff, now this with the... Do you think this is ever going to have, people are actually sign something and we have 5 to 7 years of calm, or is this going to be all the time?
Well, at some point, you would imagine that we'll have stability in some way, or a level of stability that we don't have today. It's not coming anytime soon, though. We're in a transformative time in college sports, and I would guess that we'll continue in that transformative time for a while until we do reach some stability. So we're probably not there yet, and we're probably maybe even a few years away from there.
Yep, it seems like you've had to go get a law school degree to be a part of what you're doing. And
Right.
seriously, I mean this. You've done an incredible job with it. That's why we reach out to you as much as we do, and we appreciate it. And great job this week and into the future. We appreciate your time.
No problem.
Thank you. Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports, with us on 365 Sports.
I just got Paul.
He got me.
Toasted Paul.
I was right there.
Who was the producer we had at the radio station that was terrible about hanging up the phone earlier?
Jordan.
Yeah, that's right.
Jordan couldn't never. I mean, he was.
And he was good.
Yeah, he was
was
great
really good.
producer.
Jordan
except for
Victoria.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of things on that, and always appreciate getting to talk to Ross. Does it make more sense now?
Yeah.
I mean,
It does.
I understand where you're coming from. It's all very confusing. It really is. But I think the part that he clarified that I probably didn't clarify so well was the meeting coming up next week with Schultz, where he's going to have this opportunity to say, here, like Ross laid it out well, the three options that are at the table. And you can see why Washington State doesn't have the full control that it might appear they do. They have some level of it. They have a power stick to use, right? A weapon to use, but it's not a weapon that lasts no matter what for however long. I mean, it's I guess here's what I was trying to think. If you're a Washington State and Oregon State, what would keep you? You still have a couple of years here, and we've seen conferences change so dramatically, of building something, even though you're not going to get anybody unless the ACC splinters, of building your own conference that's pretty good, that allows you to have a better strength of schedule than the rest of the group of fives. Because nothing's stopping you other than the opportunities that are out there and available to you, because everybody else is locked down. And who are you going to go get at this point? You're going to go ally with the Mountain West, or you're going to pick up WCC schools and play Gonzaga in basketball or whatever. Like, those are your options. You don't have other options that are any better than that. And not that those are terrible, but compared to the quote unquote power leagues, like there's no combination of teams. You can go get every market, New Orleans market, get Tulane. We'll get.
I understand.
But I'm just saying, like, there's no combination that's going to get you to where you were. There's not. That's not possible. But I mean, that's one of the questions out there. You're saying, why don't they do that? Well, who's to say that they're not trying to do that?
Yeah.
They've got 2 years to figure out, less than 2 years, because you're not going to obviously.
They're not going to go into the final year without something. Yeah.
Right. So they've got a little bit of time. They've got this situation in front of them. There will be clarity next week, obviously, as the board responds to Schultz's request and the idea that they're going to be treated like a Power 5 and make Power 5 money and have that at their disposal when there's still only 2 teams just seems like, yeah, that's not going to probably fly with anybody, nor should it, quite frankly. I think that would be – I don't care how much of, the feelings are that you feel bad for them. I don't think the good for the sport is to allow a 2-team Pac-12 to have the same rights as everybody else.
No.
That's going to be very interesting next week to see how that works out. But he did provide some clarity there that I was unable to explain probably very well, that I think paints the clear picture of what he's trying to accomplish and the reasons as to why. But your question in general is valid of why would you do that? But there's things in play that aren't as simple as like, well, this is the best way to the playoff, because it's just not that general, right? Of course, if it was just about what's the best shot at the playoff, well, let's go this model would be best for these 2 schools. But when you take into account all of the other factors, like, I don't know, maybe wanting some of these schools to help you out in the future, but you're screwing up their little party here, that could cause you problems down the line.
If you trust those schools that would leave you out of the party, if you trust them to not leave you out of the party. Otherwise, you're going to vote to give up land, and you're still going to be left behind. That's one of the things I guess I'm looking at. But it makes a lot more sense to me the way you guys have discussed it, and also with Ross's. It
really simply comes down to the whole AQ thing that occurred weeks ago, of the fact that they're not going to be treated as an automatic qualifier. I mean,
because of the number of teams.
Because they only have 2 teams. And so that's really what it boils down to, is you lose that automatic qualifier spot. But I think that was a story that's obviously been of interest to a lot of people for a while now. And I know many Washington State and Oregon State fans are just very, I guess, excited but very nervous as well as to what the future holds. And they've got a little bit of breathing room, but not a lot of breathing room. So how they navigate that, and again, more will be learned next week with how they respond to Schultz's inquiry there.
It sounds like to me that Kirk Schultz is going to let this thing go. It's going to pass.
Eventually, yes.
I think it's going to pass next week. It sounds like he will lay down, and I'm not trying to say that as he's being a whatever, but it sounds like he's going to either abstain, or it looks like he understands the future, so go ahead and just let it go, move on, and figure out what you can do in the future.
Yeah, that seems like what's going to probably happen. And if not, then, either way, it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
And then yet again, you're doing that because you don't want the SEC and Big Ten to bludgeon you. Well, they've already done that. They're going to do that maybe anyway. So I guess maybe dumb, I would be killed in a fight. I would want to go down scratching and clawing. But again, look, you don't have – they have guns and they have ammunition and you have your fists.
I don't blame him for scrapping to the end. But, again, there has to be an end.
Yeah. No,
you have to see, don't Tommy Tuberville this thing where you're just like, nope, not doing it. Nope, no. I mean, you just can't keep pushing without it. Like, okay, well, when does this end? Only this way. No.
Well, eventually, in 2 years, it's not going to matter what you think. So you've only got so much time to even wield this power of yours, or this weapon that you have. So that's only viable for so long. That's not a never-ending weapon that you have.
Yeah, you're going to get worn down.
Eventually, everybody has to move on. You have to move on to the new playoff structure, and in a couple of years, when everything basically opens back up, and again, you have no playoff format out there for beyond these next 2 years. That's what you're looking at, and you got a lot of work to do to get there. So this needs to be resolved somehow or another. So that'll be interesting next week, like I've said a few times now. There's one other part that I wanted to mention, though. I think we all, and I include everybody in this, I think we all need to wrap our heads around the idea that this isn't going to be black and white. This isn't going to be neat and tidy where everybody's in their conference and it's labeled this and it's all like this and it's structured like this. I think, guys, we're headed into this whole new era where everything's new and different, and not everything's going to be cut into squares and there's equal shares here with these power schools. I think the whole idea behind the two person two league alliance is to do things drastically in some cases and maybe slightly differently in some cases in the future. And so I think just the idea in general of football fitting in this nice, clean little playoff with these, I just don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case. So
what you're saying is the two biggest conferences who already have the two biggest TV deals are still going to get more of the college football playoff revenue than everybody else and just separate even more?
I think that's probably going to be the case. I guess in general what I'm trying to say is this whole idea of it's going to be black and white is not the case. There's going to be more gray and various colors in whatever this looks like moving forward is what I'm trying to say. I don't think it's just going to be the way that we've known it to be. I don't think we also know what it's going to look like necessarily, revenue sharing and the playoff and all of that. We have a loose idea on the playoff, but again, that's 2 years away from being different possibly again. I just think the way we've always known things to be, the NCAA and how it's all worked, is all going to be different.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just think
not
that
going
it needs to be in black and white. It won't be. But surely if you're not one of the alphas, don't you need it to be in black and white if you know what you're going to get?
Sure, I need $1 million, but who's going to come give that to me, you know?
Yeah, no.
I mean, we want things, but we don't necessarily get those things. So, yeah, if you're the Big 12...
There are more schools that are not among the alphas than are, and that doesn't mean that they can win that fight, but I would think that they should figure out a way not to just complete. They've already been separated. And this isn't like, I'm not trying to everyone gets something for free. You have to earn it. If you're not earning it, then you need to get better facilities and more money and better and all that. But I just think it's just more of a separation. And I'm not against that too, because that might be the American way. If you can get it, get it. It's like UT can play whoever they want and not have to play somebody home and away. I get that. But it just seems like there's already separation. Now there's going to be more and then more and then more. And that's where you're right. I don't know what it's going to look like in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're asking Ross the question of when's it going to calm down? That's my whole point is it's not going to calm down. I mean, that's I get you want that. I get everybody wants it to be black and white. I get everybody would like to just focus on spring football, although that's not everybody. I think as many people like this other stuff as they do the actual on-the-field product sometimes. And I, depending on the topic, can be that way as well. But yeah, I think you're thinking of, not just you, but many people are thinking of this more idealistic world, the way that it's always been, and it's just not going to necessarily be that way. It doesn't have to be drastically different, but it's going to be different. And what that looks like is what we're all trying to kind of figure out, because I think we all want to just know what we're watching and know what it is. And right now they're in the process of so many things changing that we just don't have all those answers yet. But yeah, the days of the old college football, the way that it always was, it's bypassing us now. It's going a different direction.
UT parking, the idea, and by the way, he just joined us. UT, good to have you. Paxton was looking for you earlier. The idea of a Power 2 without further expansion of the SEC and the Big Ten makes no sense. It will always feel like an incomplete model. From BU Patrick, Big Ten and SEC already get the lion's share of the TV deals. That's what I was saying. They already get those anyway because they've earned it based on who they are, the audience, the markets, and all of that. And now on top of that, the college football playoff money, which is evenly distributed, will now be even different. Will the Big 12 one day not get the same chunk as the SEC?
We don't know. That's the thing, guys. We're talking it out and trying to figure out. And so, those are valid questions. And I don't know, and they don't know, and that's what everybody's trying to figure out. And I mean, there's a lot of different ideas. There's the idea that they split off. There's the idea that everybody's still a part of the same package, but they just get more and more, even though they already get more. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Is I don't think it's going to be just black and white and simple and all right, we got our answers and we can move on now. I think it's going to be this continuing ironing out of just all of these different subjects to try to eventually get to the spot where maybe it does finally settle into what it's going to be. But right now we're in the phase of change and the phase of all of these things being worked on or tweaked. And I wish I had the answers, but we all do. And that's why we're here to talk about it, is to figure it out. Yeah.
It's good for us. What I would like to think though, is if you have an automatic qualifier, that money, that chunk of those 5 automatic qualifiers are the same. No matter the conference, they're the same. And then whoever gets the other 7, that's when, like in the NCAA tournament, you get units. And that's where you pack on more money across the board. As you said, it's good for us in a way. I would rather see a little bit more black and white, but I also understand that's not happening anytime soon, and Ross even said that. When we come back, Kevin Flaherty, 247 Sports. An hour from now, Rob Dauster, thefield68.com. And also, Paul's Top 5, of course, to close everything out. Please hit like and subscribe if you haven't. And all of you who are banging the Cinnabon, what is it called?
Cinnabon.
Yeah. For Valentine's Day?
I mean, look, if you want to get out economically, a Cinnabon is a great one. And look, who doesn't like a Cinnabon?
I've just never been anything that's like taste.
You can get
I'm sure they're delicious.
You can get the...
They're amazing. I love Cinnabons.
Yeah, you can now. They have a thing where it's the center of the bun, so you don't get the waste of it.
Oh, okay.
Like the outside of it. It's just the tender inside. It's wonderful.
Okay. All right. And when we come back, Kevin Flaherty, his thoughts about college basketball, where we are, and also the Big 12 and other conferences as we head closer and closer, believe it or not, the conference tournament time. This is 365 Sports.
You know what else is a great Valentine's present for the one you love? Maybe a nice bottle of local craft bourbon or craft beer, if they're into that. I don't know, like they could be. I mean, it would be a great gift for me. You know, I don't know if my wife's watching right now, but it'd be a great gift for me. And you can get that at Riverbend Liquor and Wine, the best selection of local craft bourbons, Texas bourbons, anywhere. And the best selection of craft beer in Central Texas. Always turn to the roster. It's February now. You're going to see those spring brews coming out, winter brews going out the door, and the spring brews coming in, which means a lot of cool different things are coming there at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. And they've got another location downtown on Franklin Avenue to serve you, not just the OG on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street. So with two locations, great customer service, and a speedy drive-through window, there's no reason not to, especially if you forgot your Valentine, or maybe on the way home tonight after you're watching this, you're going by there and saying, you know what, I need to pick up a bottle of wine. You can do that as well. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, now with two locations to serve you.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. a hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Kevin Flaherty, 247 Sports, hell of a college basketball writer, joins us. Greg Smoak and Paul Catalina, David Smoak on 365 Sports. Kevin, I've used the word battering ram for the Big 12. Kansas has 5 losses. The winner of the conference might end up with, my goodness, 5 losses. I don't know. Is it even more competitive than you thought when the new 4 arrived and we saw this season about to start?
Yeah, I think so. You always look at the cliche like any given night, right? And I think in the Big 12, typically that's been a little more realistic than in other leagues. There's usually, a definite bottom team. You look at the SEC and Missouri doesn't have a win yet. Missouri is not, beating the top team in the SEC on any given night. But you look in the Big 12 and you look at how deep it is 1 through 14. And there have been some real scares there. Obviously Baylor had a real scare with Oklahoma State. There have been, Kansas has lost to UCF and West Virginia. And you look at the top of the league, and there's a very real chance that those teams, wind up playing some of those teams at the quote unquote bottom part of the league. And it's a very real area where they could lose. And one of the crazier things, I'm actually working on an article right now looking at the most efficient teams since January 1st. And for Big 12 teams, that means all of their games are in conference play. Kansas is the number 11 most efficient team since January 1st, and they're 7-5. And so I think that goes to tell you can be pretty much a top 10 team and still be sitting right around 500 in league play. That's how tough this league is.
Kansas's problems obviously start really with the bench in that they, for 2 years now, haven't really had a lot of depth there since the title. Where has Bill Self gone wrong with that? In addition to the fact that this year, I think it probably stems from Arterio Morris and the gigantic misstep of bringing him in.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head, and quite frankly, it's a nail that not a lot of people have hit on. I think a lot of people have looked at the roster and said, well, Nick Timberlake hasn't quite been what they thought. Marco Jackson was a McDonald's All-American that came in and was maybe a little bit more raw than people thought. But I think those things would have mostly been okay if Arterio Morris had come in and not had the issues that he had not gotten booted from the team. He would have filled a lot of the holes that they would have had. Johnny Furphy would have been a 6th man in that case. And all of a sudden, your bench unit's looking quite a bit better. And instead of that, Arterio Morris leaves. And so you're choosing between guys who maybe aren't quite as athletic, but are a little bit more skilled, or going the other way, going with a guy like Elmarco Jackson, who's a really good athlete, but still figuring out basketball at this level. And Arterio Morris was a guy that quite frankly had both. And so I think you have that, and then you have the injuries and illnesses that they've had. What was it? I think 2 weeks ago, it seemed like Texas Tech had Ebola and half their team was out, and Kansas got hit by illness too. Johnny Furphy was sick the day of the Kansas State game and only practiced once that entire week afterwards. He's coming back from that. Jamari McDowell has missed the last 2 games with illness. Kevin McCullough's injury is obviously part of that. And so you take a team that really wasn't deep in the first place and you start, sort of chopping holes on that roster. And they had 7 available scholarship players against Baylor and 7 scholarship players available 2 nights later against Texas Tech. And I think you saw the result of that. There were a lot of tired legs in Lubbock.
Kevin, Texas Tech, what a big win for them. I mean, you laid out the reasons why that game went the way that it did, but just in general, to get a banner win like that, a blowout win over KU is a big deal for Grant McCasland and company. They're 7-4 now at this point in the conference. Just having seen them progress throughout the year now under his guidance, what have stood out to you as the biggest impressions of the McCasland era early on in Lubbock?
Yeah, and let's be clear. If Kansas is full strength, Kansas wasn't winning that game. Texas Tech played that well. And Darian Williams, I'm not sure I've seen a player in the Big 12 play as efficiently as he did it in terms of scoring 30 points and not missing a shot either from the field or from the free throw line, also grabbing 11 rebounds. And with him, you can't – one of the bad things about the transfer portal is you can't count on somebody sticking around anymore, right? You can't look and say, okay, this guy's a sophomore. We'll be really excited to have him as a junior because, either, hey, they play really well, they wind up testing the NBA waters and they're gone, or other people are going to make offers or things like that. But Texas Tech, generally speaking, has to be really excited with Williams' development as a sophomore and as a guy that, if he sticks around in Lubbock, could be a foundational piece and potentially an all Big 12 piece. And you add that to the backcourt that they've had, Pop Isaacs. I like watching him a lot. He's one of those guys that is kind of fun and that, I'm not sure he has a whole lot of a filter when he's out on the court in terms of, hey, this is not the moment for me to take a 30-footer, or this is not the moment for me to do this. That makes him a lot of fun. And when you pair him with a leader and an older guy like Joe Toussaint, who's a little more reined in and kind of has a little bit more sense of the moment, I think that backcourt's coming together really, really nicely. And then the big thing for them, the thing that's kind of told the story, I feel like, on their whole season is Warren Washington and the way that he's come along. Having that kind of center and a guy that can impact the game on both ends of the court, I think has really given them a foundational piece. He won't be up for all Big 12 honors, I don't think, this year, but he'll be a guy that if you talk to coaches around the league and say, hey, what was the reason that Texas Tech had a really big season, I think they'd bring up his name sooner rather than later.
Kevin, I saw a note last night that teams ranked outside, unranked in the AP poll, unranked in the AP poll, are 34-34 against teams ranked inside the top 10. What does that say?
I think there's a lot of parity, and I think, we've said this for years, but I think you're starting to see the COVID year guys, right? You're seeing a lot of guys out there that have the fifth or in some cases even sixth year. And so I do think the transfer portal causes some of it, and there's movement and all of those different things. But I think the other part of it is just the fact that you're seeing a lot of guys that have played an awful lot of basketball spread out throughout the country. And when you have that, you can't take a night off, and you can't look at a schedule and say, okay, here's the easy part of our schedule. We've got Houston and Baylor coming up next week, but this week it's only, at West Virginia or at UCF. You can't do that because even those teams that are struggling, they have some guys that have played a lot of basketball. I think one of the reasons Oklahoma State struggles so much is just their pure youth that they have and compared to everybody else. But you look at that UCF roster, you look at that Cincinnati roster, you look at BYU roster, there are a lot of guys that have played and started a lot of basketball games, have played in a lot of games. And so even teams that are able to pick up talent in maybe more traditional ways, you're having to deal with that whole experience factor. Everybody's got it. That whole get old and stay old goal, it's very realistic, and it's not just realistic to the top part of college basketball.
Kevin, can you explain Oklahoma to me? They're, to me, the toughest team outside of maybe Texas, who makes no sense that they should be way better than they are. But Oklahoma, I just cannot get a read on them. Like, how good are they? I know they're a good team, but I don't know how good they really are.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think they're so well coached. And I think when you go back and watch Oklahoma on tape, you see a number of baskets every game that they're generating because the offense is generating the baskets rather than the players are generating the baskets. And I think defensively, obviously, Porter Moser is a tremendous coach. I still think they're maybe a little bit on the under-talented side when it comes to comparing them to the top half, say, of the Big 12. And I'm a huge Javian McCollum fan. I like Otega Oweh a lot. I think they have some interesting pieces there, but I think that they're in a spot maybe more than a lot of other people in that Baylor is so talented that every once in a while you're going to score because Jacoby Walter just gets you a basket, right? Or Ray J. Dennis has old man at the Y game, and he just, goes and is able to score. And Oklahoma doesn't have that as much. As much as I like McCollum, there's a lot of pressure on him to generate for other guys. And I think when Oklahoma doesn't execute, it looks really, really bad. I don't know that they have guys that are super capable of going out there and kind of making a moment happen on their own. And I think that's part of the problem with them is they have to execute at such a high level. And when they don't, they're going to look pretty bad.
Kevin, Baylor blew out Oklahoma last night. And my goodness, Jaden Nunn was great. He really was. But do they go as far as Jacoby Walter if he locks in as the alpha, or do they need him to be an alpha?
I don't know if they need him to be an alpha. I think there are a lot of interesting questions around Baylor. I think, for one thing, we talked about Ray J. I think Ray J is such a fascinating fit with this Baylor team because I think Ray J is very deliberate in a lot of the things that he does. And I think that this is a Baylor team that outside of Ray J. Dennis really is probably at its best when they can get out and run, right? You look at how good Jacoby Walter is in transition. I mean, I don't know of a whole lot of centers out there that run the way that Misi does. And so, it's a little bit of not quite maybe a hand-in-glove fit, and that's not taking anything away from him. He's a really good player, and he does some great things. I think that's part of the question. I think you're not sure on a night-to-night basis what you're going to get from Missy. I call him Hurricane Eves because he's a guy that, you'll notice for the wrong reason, or, you won't notice him at all for a stretch, and then all of a sudden, he'll have 6 points and 5 rebounds in 2 minutes and, block 2 shots. And you say, my gosh, this guy's the most talented guy in the Big 12. And so, I think they've got players like Jacoby Walter and like Missy that can go in and change games with, sort of individual talent and individual brilliance. I don't know that it needs to be Walter consistently. I do think they need him to show up consistently. But I think that, obviously when you look at last night's game, gosh, how good would Baylor be if Jaden Nunn was anywhere approaching that on a night-to-night basis? Mm-hmm. But I think they can do it as a team. I think they can be, hey, this guy gets 15 tonight, this guy gets 15 tomorrow night. But I do think that if they're going to go a long way in March, they probably need to have some moments of brilliance from the 2 freshmen.
Well, you're right. And Misi, goodness, just dripping with what looks like amazing talent for now and also into the future. Now, their guards, Dennis, Nunn, Walter, they're very, very erratic with ball control. I mean, they turn it over like 17 turnovers of 21 or whatever against Kansas on the road, and they almost still had a chance. They did have 2 chances to tie the game. Is that just who they are? Because last night I think they had just 5. I don't know if that's saying something about Oklahoma's defense or they tightened it up or what.
Well, and, Ray J over his career has typically protected the ball really well. That was a big part of who he was coming into Baylor. And so I don't know that it's necessarily who they are. I do think there are, kind of lapses in concentration, if you will, without knowing the locker room a ton. I know that this guy wasn't perfect either, but I don't know that there's a Mark Vidal who scares everybody within a 50-foot radius of him. Like if you make a mistake, I don't know that they necessarily have that guy. Obviously missing Langston Love, you wind up not having that extra option to go to. I think Miro Little, a lot of people maybe expected a little bit more from him at this point as well. And so that hurts too, because you can't look at a guy when he has a sloppy turnover or a couple turnovers or whatever. You can't look at him and say, okay, you're out of the game. We're just going to replace you with this other guy when the replacement isn't there. And so I do think they need to hone in on the focus a little bit, but I do think Ray J. Dennis in particular is really capable of taking care of the basketball. And so that's something to watch for the final month or so, though.
All right, if you don't mind, I need to ask you about something. Obviously, you had the news earlier this week about what was going on with 247. You and I traded some text messages about this. I said a lot of people have reached out to you. You're really good at what you do, and I hope that when people have a chance, whoever it might be, to listen to this segment or any segment you've been on with us and want to have you on in the future, obviously it's been a really hard week for you because 800 people or so were laid off this week. Have you had anybody reach out to you? And if not, we need to figure that out.
I've had a few people reach out to me. I appreciate that. It was a tough day yesterday. I think it's unfortunately something that's become a lot more commonplace in media. And quite frankly, I had been a part of 3 or 4 different newspapers or different media entities that went through layoffs where I was safe. And, I was kind of telling my wife that, it was sort of my turn, so to speak. You don't expect, I don't think, anymore to make it through and not get laid off, at some part. It's part of the journey. And so I appreciate the praise and everything. A few people have reached out, but it was certainly a tough day, and some talented colleagues are going to be out there on the market as well. If something does hit, let me know. We'd like to continue to get you on throughout the rest of the basketball season. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it, and good luck. All right. Thanks a lot. Kevin Flaherty, 247 CBS Sports college basketball writer. So unranked AP teams are 34-34 against teams ranked in the top 10, not top 25. 34-34 against teams inside the top 10 this year. And I think what it means is that top 25 could be the top 38.
Oh, I think so. I think you've got...
Those receiving votes are a lot better than just, by the way, they're getting some votes.
Well, look, when you look at how the NCAA tournament went last season, 1 to 5 across the board seeds were all lethal. 1 to and then you could probably go 5 to 10 all the way down the line. So that's 40 seeds, right? 40 teams. So 5 to 10, all pretty lethal, all across the board, and anybody can win any given night. And basketball is quicker to see parity more than football would. I mean, look, the powers that be are always going to be the powers that be. They're always going to be up there. But when you're talking about one guy can swing something one way or the other, for a team and make you different more so than football can. I mean, geez. I mean, how big could this get, especially, how deep could things get when guys are like, well, my school can pay me $1 million or this school can pay me $1 million to come here. Well, this one can only do that. Well, I don't really have to go to one of the big boys. I'll stay here and do that because I'll take up most of the NIL because that's all they want to spend it on. It's a completely different world, and you're going to see, again, with the COVID guys or with guys staying longer now because of NIL, I think you're going to see this more and more down the line.
Yeah, I think it's just all the different things in play that Paul mentioned, all leading to even playing field, more so than we see in football in particular, especially the trajectory that's going now. But, yeah, it ought to make for a great March. That's what I know. It should make for an incredible next few weeks as the conference races start to wind down, and then conference tournaments, and then March Madness and all that good stuff that's on the horizon here. Should make for a lot of great contests, and I'm looking forward to all of that. So, yeah, it's a very fun, wide area that you have to cover when talking about the great teams in college basketball right now. And that's a good, it's not even a problem, but it's a good thing to have for the sport, to have so many great options out there. All right, 425, a little bit later on, we'll hear what Rob Dauster has to say about many things college basketball. We'll also look at the Big 12 standings, where things are after last night's results. The ACC has approved something that was brought up when the Michigan issue became front and center for a long time during the 2023 season. Coaches, others said, why not put communication devices in the helmet like they do in the NFL? We'll come back with that story. Ross Dellinger just had that, among others. And this is 365 Sports.
IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas marketplace. You have something that's really bothering you that you don't quite know what it is, but it's there. And it kind of, at times you wake up in the middle of the night, you can't sleep well. It might be your hip. It could be your back. It might be your shoulder. Something's torn, a muscle or a ligament, or just something's not right, and it's uncomfortable. Not just during the day, but also, as I said, when you wake up in the middle of the night. I've had that before when I had rotator cuff surgery to fix that problem. I have a hip that constantly is kind of like reminding me something's just not right, and I've had an MRI, and it doesn't really show anything, so it could just be age. But if you need a better look of what's inside of you, of what is bothering you, your doctor wants a look, and they need an MRI, there's no question. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace in Waco is a great option for you. $497 or less every single time. $497 or less, and they'll also help you file the insurance and maybe get something else off of that. And here's another thing. The appointment's not going to be constantly back and forth in the portal or phone calls. It will be done. It'll be set. You get there. They'll take care of you. The Texan specialist. And let's not forget, again, for $497 or less, state-of-the-art technology at IdealMRI.com.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
During the Michigan scandal, the investigation, et cetera, there were many that said, hey, why don't we just put communication in the helmets of the players, and that would take away any kind of hand signals? There might still be some of those. I don't know. Well, there was a test of the helmet communications in a bowl game. And Ross Dellinger with this story, college football ready to get out of the Stone Age. The bowl trial run with helmet communication showing promise, and now the ACC approved in-game helmet communication, sideline video usage, pending NCAA approval. This only seems to make sense. I've always asked, why can't things make sense before you have something that could have prevented anything else?
Well,
but
forever,
that's part of the deal.
They like to cry poverty on these things. Like, well, not everybody can afford it. Like, all right, you're going to make, at worst, you're all going to make 10, well, I guess not 10, but like $9 million or $8 million on TV rights. You can't direct some of that money or ask the head coach that you're paying $1 million to, like, hey, can we?
Million?
Well, I mean, like, even I'm talking the smaller schools.
Okay,
like, that was
okay.
like, everything was the smaller schools can't afford this. The smaller schools can't afford this. All right, well, if you're Troy, you're paying your coach probably $1 million a year, right? I mean,
Probably.
Okay. You can't take, say you're paying him 1.1. You can't take that $100,000 every year and put it to helmets. Like, take some of your TV deal money and put it towards the 2 helmets you need to do this. Come on.
Well, you would need it for every quarterback. You'd need it for somebody on defense, and you'd need it for whoever's using the communication on the sideline or the booth, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it was always kind of a silly reason the last decade of like why they didn't do it. The technology's there, it works really well, and everybody's got the money now, and there could be some revenue sharing in that, like as far as a pool to make sure that competitive balance is all right.
It just makes sense. There's no real reason to not have that done outside of the budgetary concerns, but I think that you can find a way to scrounge up a few $1,000s, especially if that's going to be the status quo around all of college football. So, yeah, that's just a part of the equipment budget now, I would imagine, but easier said than done probably for some schools, but if it's for the benefit of the entire team, then you're going to want to have that, right? And no matter what level you're at, you're going to want to have that in-game communication, especially somebody who's wanting to chat with their quarterback on a regular basis. So they did this in multiple bowl games this past year and tried that out and seemed to go well. So, yeah, it was a unanimous vote. Everybody in the ACC is in favor of it, but it's not passed yet. The NCAA has to sign off on it. So I don't know why they wouldn't. Unless there's just something I'm completely missing here, but it seems like the ACC is just going to be the start of, I would imagine, multiple leagues doing much the same, and then getting NCAA approval will allow it to happen, and then next thing you know, here we are, and the whole issue of not having that level of communication will be resolved. Simple as that. So, yeah, the ACC's taken that first step forward, and it seemed like it was a pretty easy decision for the league's coaches.
And in the bowl game between Texas Tech and Cal, Texas Tech outfitted communication kits in 8 helmets, 2 on offense, the starting and backup quarterback, 6 on defense, 2 inside linebackers, a safety, and their backups, 2 coordinators equipped with radio pack connected to their waist, tied to their headsets. A simple push of a button opens up the line of communication. It makes so much sense, you wonder why that hasn't already happened, and it's part of course, the things that take time. The NFL's got it. I mean, they have it. You see the guy with the big placard or whatever it is. And
well, you see the green sticker on the back of the helmets. That's the radio helmet.
Yeah. So
bureaucracy is why.
Right. I mean, I mean, why does? I mean, there's bureaucracy. There's reasons as to why, but it seems like a pretty simple solution outside of just the payment of it. But if you're at Ohio State, you're not blinking at a few thousand, tens thousands, whatever it ends up being dollars. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket. But again, even the schools that maybe would have to go fundraise or whatever the situation may be, I mean, they're going to be the outliers. I mean, I don't know. So, okay, you'll find a way to fundraise and get your helmets equipped, because guess what? Your coaches are going to want to have that communication because it's better for your football team. So I think that's why it was is easily a decision made by the ACC. And again, the NCAA will have to pass that, but
the others will come soon.
Yeah, the others will come soon, and I'd imagine it's going to be the status quo here in relatively no time at all. So, yeah, that's a overdue decision, but glad we're getting to it for all the things that, like, why is it not this way? Well, at least in this case, they're getting around to addressing it and making it not such an obvious omission from the game of college football.
All right, let's talk about the cost. Nick Saban earlier during the football season said something about we should do it, etc. The cost is not astronomical, especially for many college programs that produce more than $50 million or so in revenue annually. Texas Tech rented 10 helmet communications units for $20,000.
See, yeah.
Maryland paid a fee of $5,000 for 6 helmet kits. There's another reason for the stall in approving wireless communications in the college game helmet manufacturers, which are the ones who make the helmets in whatever that might mean. So I was wondering how much it is, but if you rented 10 for $20,000 for one game, is that 10 or 20,000 times 14 games? And then you're looking at $300,000 or $400,000.
No, you have to buy it at that point, but renting, there's a markup. I mean, look, if you would rent a video, like think of it like Blockbuster back in the day, Smokey. You'd rent a video, it'd cost you $3.99 to rent it for the night. If you bought that same video, if you wanted to watch it 10 times, you wouldn't rent it 10 times because it wouldn't cost you $40. It would cost you $20. So if you wanted to buy the movie, you could just buy the movie for $20. Like this, there was a markup on that. So whatever the markup on the rental is whatever. So it would be less than, 20,000 times 14. It would be probably more like 20,000 times 9.
Okay.
It's not a reason to not do it.
No, I thought if it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, then I would want it. But it's not.
You've bought it, and you just have to maintain it until it goes out, and then you get new ones.
Until there's a new one.
I mean, what are we talking? We're talking about a sport that buys all sorts of things all the time.
Jerseys.
So yeah, I mean, what are we talking about?
They have a plane,
right?
A plane.
There's football operations buildings.
Well, let's not worry about the cost here. I mean, I'm sure for Alcorn State, or just respectfully, whoever maybe has a little bit tighter purse strings, okay, for them, sorry, but for the majority of people that we're talking about, that's a non-issue when you're already spending millions of dollars on everything else under the sun. So yeah, that's a part of the story that just doesn't even really matter to me unless you're like the selective very few who have just really no money to burn.
You know how much it costs? Less than one plane ride from Knoxville to Dallas to recruit a kid from Cedar Hill. Like that's what it. I mean, so
yeah, the gas.
They're gonna get on the private jet and be like, ah, damn, we're really pinching pennies here.
Yeah.
By the way, another scotch.
Yeah, right.
Like, come on.
Yeah, well, I talk on the phone with this recruit and offer him $1 million to come play here for his name, image, likeness, or whatever. Yeah, I mean that's not the holdup. It's just now we're getting the ball rolling here, and so great. They're gonna have helmet communication. It's not life changing by any means. It's not gonna drastically alter the sport in any way, but it's a good step forward technology-wise and probably a bit overdue.
Yep, I agree. I think it could eliminate some issues. Doesn't mean you might not have somebody trying to interfere.
Look, I'll tell you right now.
Yeah,
Connor Stallions has just gone to work and trying to figure out how to tap into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he's done.
Yep.
He'll go back to Sharon Moore and be like, listen, I'll grow a mustache and dye my hair, and I'll figure out a way to
They
to
got
do
helmet
this.
devices, but I now know how to get inside their helmet devices.
I learned this from fixing vacuums.
Oh, my God. So there we are with that. Now, we had some quotes earlier. Garrett, let's go back to just put up whichever one you have from the town hall meeting that Chris Del Conte had at the University of Texas athletic director. They'll play any Big 12 teams in football going forward, but only if those teams appear willing to play in Austin as opposed to any kind of home and home. Craig had a great reason for that. Most of the schools in the Big 12, when it comes to the attendance of the stadium, the capacity or whatever, nothing close to what UT has or other schools that they're going to play in the SEC.
Well, there's also a part right there in the middle. It will depend on if the SEC plays an 8-game or 9-game league schedule, which is another part of the comments that he had from last night. So bearing in mind what he had to say about a 9-game schedule, that could affect that. So that's a pretty big piece there in the middle. But yes, it's also is the juice worth the squeeze for Texas. And I'm not looking at this from a pro Big 12 point of view where, I'm like they're the devil or anything, but from their standpoint, like, yeah, why are you going to go to agree to just home and homes with a bunch of the old Big 12 teams unless there's some incentive for you? That's the place that they've put themselves now, and they rightfully can choose to play who they want for whatever reasons they want. And yeah, even if it comes across as a bit arrogant of, we'll play at our place, but we won't play you at your place. I mean, there's probably people that won't like to hear that. Well, guess what? You just won't agree to play then. And it's as simple as that.
Yep.
And then hopefully no Big 12 team agrees to an arrangement like that. But I think that part about the SEC schedule is important because that's going to obviously take away your Coppin State or your Nicholls State game in late November or whatever, most likely. And so where would you fit in another Big 12 team on top of playing 9 SEC games and then, your two gimmies potentially or however you would arrange that, maybe a traditional rival? I don't know, but the 9-game schedule will play into that. And I think, too, what Texas is asking for will play into what any Big 12 schools decide to do, because I would hope that not all of them will – or any of them would agree to an arrangement where they don't at least get a home game in return.
Yeah, because they need to have home revenue too. Yeah,
but as Odie said, it'd be willing to only play in Austin. So I'm trying to figure out who would be
Colorado.
I mean, maybe they would do that, but I
even then,
if I'm Baylor, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
If I'm TCU, I'm not doing that. If I'm Texas Tech, I'm not doing that. Why? Mm-hmm. Why would I do that? Because for 2.5 hours, I get to be in the spotlight of this broadcast, and that's going to pay me so many dividends that it's worth not getting that back in return, when the big return is where the most juice can be squeezed from, right?
Some of the schools in the Big 12 have pretty decent-sized stadiums. There's not anyone that I know of. How big is Brigham? The first time I've said that in a long time. Oklahoma State, no. BYU, no. Cincinnati, no. UCF, no.
No what?
As far as 75,000
none
more.
Of them.
And obviously the schools that are a part of the new incoming four with Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, Arizona. Arizona State Sun Devil Stadium is a pretty big stadium. It's a pretty big stadium. It's hosted Super Bowls, but they don't fill that baby up that I know of. I don't think they do.
Well, it doesn't even matter how big they are. It's just simply the impact of having Texas on the schedule for you as a home host is immense. But if they're not going to do that, then how much do you get just by going to play them there? It's like, I just don't know that that's all that worthwhile for Big 12 teams either. Maybe there's some incentive about the money they would pay or something along those lines, but I'm just coming from the standpoint of, if you're a Big 12 school, I'd hope you have enough self-respect or you have enough of your ducks in a row where you wouldn't need to agree to an arrangement like that, unless there's just some reason why you feel like that game needs to be played in Austin and you don't get a return trip. But we'll see how that plays out, because that's just a comment from last night. So there's a long way to go in getting schedules fixed up for the next several years.
Some of the responses are, why should we or anyone else expect anything else or less from Texas? And retired stockbroker, idiocy. Kim, every other SEC school will play home and home. Dion in Colorado, maybe.
Yeah, I could see maybe them doing that just to think outside the box and get into Texas and get into a big, I guess.
But they're selling out every game they have right now with all of the energy they have. I don't know why they would want to give up a home game in a series like that unless they added somebody else that they can come to Boulder twice.
Yeah, well.
Right, that's what I know. I don't know.
Okay, so stadium capacity across the Big 12. The two largest stadiums are Lavelle Edwards Stadium at BYU at 63,000 and Jones AT&T Stadium at 60,454, and then just under that, West Virginia at 60,000. So,
which is 40-some thousand less than Texas hosts.
Yeah. So, sorry.
Plus.
Did I say Jack Trice? Jack Trice is 61.5. So you've got four stadiums in the 60,000 range, and then the rest of the 12 are between 50 and 55, 45 and 50. So Nippert Stadium's at 40. So you're talking about mostly smaller stadiums. So there's nothing you can do. We'll play 2 games in a year with you to give that back. You can't do that. No. So it's not, and I get it. Look, Craig made the great point earlier. You left because you didn't want to play them anymore.
So why would you want to play them again?
If Chris Del Conte just said, listen, the reason we left is because we've gone as far as we can go playing these schools, we feel like it. As far as playing on the field, no offense to them, it's not like they can't beat us or anything, but we're moving on to the SEC for this reason. If we still wanted to play Big 12 schools, we would be a Big 12 school.
No, yep. And again, there are a few of those teams that would be pretty good to play, but again, to give up a home game, you have to have some pride in there somewhere, no matter who you're playing in a non-conference game. By the way, Michael DeHart, West Virginia, 65,000. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Oh, I said 60.
Yeah,
but,
that's okay. So give or
thank
take.
you.
That's still a pretty good chunk.
That
All
was
right.
the information given to me by Wikipedia. So
I
guess somebody hasn't updated that. I guess what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, I'll have to talk to Mr. Wicca.
A couple of other things that were mentioned last night. They're putting together new facilities, a new football facility. They're looking at a small. I won't get into the other sports, but they're looking at a smaller venue when it comes to some other sports of women's sports. But they also
volleyball is what they're talking about, a smaller arena.
It's a national championship sport. They'll fill that up. But again, I can see downsizing there.
It's because you want to get it right. It's because the arena that they use is not under their ownership.
No, that's right.
So they can't do everything that they want to do. For example, like concessions, like they can't do that the way that Texas wants to do it.
Yeah,
so
own the
if you have your own arena, then you can do all of the different things that you want to do, and you're not at the will of the people who owned the building that you're using for your sport.
I'm glad. I wish I wouldn't have brought it up, but I'm glad you
clarified. No, it's not that big of a deal. It's just simple. That's the explanation for why they want that, is so that they can
control
have more
money.
control,
Yep.
and they control the actual venue that they're playing in.
Texas OU, Del Conte saying that they would look at the possibility of a 2:30 start at some point, maybe even as early as this year. Not sure that can happen. And again, you're looking at different networks who will be carrying them at the same time. Some of the same networks. That game has always been 11 o'clock. I think there may be an exception or two, but that's been the 11 o'clock game. Obviously, he mentioned the A&M game on Thanksgiving night, like the days of old. And you wonder if that's what A&M wants to do, which you wouldn't. Why not? That's a great chance to have. But there's now more NFL games on Thursday night Thanksgiving than there used to be.
Well, also for Texas OU, now they're with ESPN exclusively, so they don't have to trade off to Fox and do 11 o'clock kicks, because that's where Fox wants to put Big Noon, is Texas OU. So now that just wherever ESPN decides to put them, because they don't have to trade that off. There's no draft for Texas and OU games with Fox anymore. They don't go back and forth. It's with the SEC and ESPN. So that's the only thing. Whether it's on ESPN, ESPN2, the SEC network, or ABC is the only decision they have to make.
Yeah, I mean, the 2:30 later kick would be interesting. Just so accustomed to seeing the 11 a.m. Every year. I know that there's this dream that some people have, and even at one point in time, I had the same dream of what would it look like to have a night game. I think that would be quite the spectacle, but I also know that it would be logistically a nightmare, because you'd have people drinking at the state fair all day, and you'd probably have just a lot of issues, and so that's not something, especially just with all the crowds that they have there, that you really want to be dealing with when you've got it pretty good the way that it's set up currently. So the night game, I think, would just be like a one-off, would be amazing, but I understand the reasons as to why they don't do that. But the 2:30 kick, a later kick, I don't see why that would be too much of an issue, and I think that might be really interesting to not see it kick off at the same time for once. So, yeah, that would be fine with me.
Well, the Big Noon kickoff had a lot to do with that, too. That game always was that on Fox the last several years?
Well,
Texas
it
OU?
flips. Yeah, it moves around.
Yeah. What?
It flips.
Also, somebody asked about South Carolina, looking at an SEC. They got 77,000 capacity at Williams-Brice Stadium, so that's a big dude, too, in the SEC.
And I do think the SEC will start, and again, you have to, because you're going to have that, but if you had a stadium that was 40,000 in the SEC, they're going to be like, hey, let's get some more chairs in there, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what you can do for the smaller ones, but yeah, they have some of the top stadiums, reeled off some of the names. They've got amongst even the pro sports, they've got I guess a handful of the top 10, top 15 stadiums. So UT will fit right in there. Oklahoma's got a very healthy amount, not quite 100,000, but more than enough to pack the Palace on the Prairie. And so, yeah, they'll fit right in with the Tennessees and the LSUs and the Georgias and all of that, Alabama, so on and so forth. I mean, it's every way it's a fit for them guys. I mean, I know it's weird to see them leave and all of that, but it makes all the sense in the world for those two schools, whether we, like it or not, for the sake of the Big 12 or for teams in the Big 12 and fans of Big 12 teams that we all get along with. From their standpoint, it's pretty easy to figure out that they're moving into a neighborhood that is more up to their standards, and in many ways is more similar, like stadium sizes, than what they've been playing in the last couple of decades.
I get what they're doing, and yet, okay, and enjoy it. It's like Mike Bean said. By the way, Texas OU, removing them from the Big 12, not removed, they're the ones that left, opens up more opportunities for Big 12 schools.
It does. It's the exciting thing about it is we talked about this a couple of times over, I guess, the last month or so when just talking about basketball and the football. One thing, and I know we don't produce on air, but we have an idea for maybe tomorrow is the win totals for the Big 12 came out, so it'd be kind of fun to.
Didn't we do that?
No.
We never did do that tweet?
If y'all did that last week, maybe. We did it on the podcast.
No, we did the FanDuel over-under.
Yeah, we did. We did.
Yeah. On this show?
Yeah. Well, you weren't here. You were not in Vegas.
So yeah.
No,
so
I thought we did it on Monday.
No, I don't think so.
It was up here on the.
I thought it was Monday.
It was up here on the screen.
Okay, well, I don't think we really talked about it at all.
Yeah.
I think we just looked at it maybe, but that would be kind of fun to do. I think if we haven't already done that, but maybe I'm just misremembering.
We can go back to it and get deeper into it.
The point being that I think it's going to be a very wide open race. I know Utah fans think that they're just going to run the conference, and there's
saw that the other day.
K-State fans that think the same, or Tech fans that think the same, or TCU, and so on and so forth. But I think everybody feels pretty good about the future and having an opportunity, whereas, these last couple of decades, you pretty much in every preseason poll had one or the other of Oklahoma and Texas mentioned, normally Oklahoma, and always just favored and always at the top of the picks, and not necessarily every single year. There was a time or two, Baylor was voted the number one team like a couple of years ago, and others have snuck up there, but you generally always had them at the very forefront of everything, and now to have them not there, it opens it up in ways that I don't even think we quite understand how competitive it might be, and how much of a just nice change of pace it will be to not always hear the caveat of, but Oklahoma and Texas all the time, and just have this league run wild on each other and see what that looks like on the other end. But it should make for some great football and a very competitive league race, I would think.
Tell me if I'm right or wrong in the chat, and we do need a break. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. There are a lot of you in the chat that are like, I'd rather talk about the WNBA than updates on UT, which we're going to cover them. And we have UT fans that have been very loyal from the beginning to what we do. And there's some that just don't want to talk about them anymore. Well, we're going to talk about them because it's still college football like we do other segments. But there are some that attitude that you heard when, if they want to play us both games at home, you're sick of it and good riddance. Is that the feeling I get?
I also, like, being in this business for as long as we have, we used to get callers that call up and like, are they talking about Baylor at the UT station? I'm like, I can't worry about what they're doing. Like, I just know what works for us. And so we're going to talk about them because they're in the news and it's an interesting thing.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Because we're supposedly a Baylor station. Are they talking about Baylor on the stations in Austin?
I can promise you.
Well, they were for a couple of summers.
They were. They were. But, again, it's not my job to program other places.
No. We're a college football, and we will, whatever the story is, and Del Conte had the town hall meeting. I thought it was interesting. Didn't agree with everything, but we did report it and wanted to talk about it. And glad Greg said, hey, let's go back to some of the things that actually were said that we didn't get to touch on very much. Deshaun Foster, UCLA.
I didn't know which one. I wasn't sure on this tweet.
Okay.
On Deshaun Foster.
Which one? Just put one of them up. There we go. That's not it. That's UCLA, though. What's neat about this is that's UCLA with the Big Ten logo on the jersey, on their uniform. It's the first time anyone's seen that. That was just a matter of happening. But there we are with that. Deshaun Foster, there was a tweet from, I don't know if it might have been from him with the hat on and all that. Hayden Maxwell. What are the chances, percent of the chance, Craig, Big 12 gets UNC to pair with Duke because of the political drama of UNC and NC State, and both the Big Ten and SEC say they ain't worth it?
would say less than 5% chance of that happening. I don't see either league saying that they wouldn't be worth it, or both of those leagues saying that they wouldn't be worth it. I think that's a flagship state school that is worth it, and the Big 12 would love to have a North Carolina, so it'd be a great idea. I won't pretend to know all the moves that are coming. I don't think anybody, even Greg Sankey, could necessarily know all the moves that are coming, or any commissioner for that matter. But I think that that's a pretty small percentage, because you often hear, and we saw this a little bit with Cal and UCLA. The Cal system eventually got some money and got what they wanted to allow UCLA to go move to the Big Ten, and I do think that there are those types of situations that need to be taken into account. But I think when you're talking about a move for a school like North Carolina, that the future of college athletics is so changing that you're going to risk them not having a seat at the table because you want to have 2 seats at the table. I just think that would be cutting off your nose to spite your face, would it not?
Oh, yeah.
So I think that would be an error in judgment to force that situation. So I don't know. I understand why that's an idea, and why that's been talked about a bit, is the governmental aspect of the state of North Carolina. But I think it would work itself out, and that wouldn't necessarily be you get them both or you don't get them all, or you don't get them at all. And so I think that would be just a poor decision.
I will tell anyone historically now. Like, I know that you're going back 35 years when you talk about what happened in the Big 12 and how the governor and lieutenant governor and politicians and people like that got involved, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how that.
Some of that's still not even known, as some things are said that aren't even true.
Yeah, but like they did. They got involved to whatever extent it was. And there was the thought that at least, especially that A&M and Texas were tied at the hip, and wherever one had to go, the other had to go. And that was true politically for a little while. But the minute that A&M went to the SEC, that the national attitude was clearly going to be serving whatever that was. So like even in Texas, the governor was an Aggie. He wasn't going to stand in the way, so he let it happen. And then, what happens in North Carolina, what happened in California, and North Carolina, it's only tied together as insofar as the politicians say the right thing in their jurisdiction to not get people pissed off so they can continue having that job. When it comes down to, the decision-making and where somebody goes, it's always going to be for the money. It's always going to be for the money. So if NC State is costing money by tying them to North Carolina, then NC State's going to lose. And NC State and North Carolina will no longer be tied together because they're no longer mutually beneficial. And North Carolina will be, hey, thanks for backing us up when we asked, but now GTFO.
Yeah, they would come to some type of an agreement, unless, the SEC wants NC State. And I can't say that they don't, because I don't know that for sure. I would bank on they probably don't care, because I just feel like that would, at some point, no disrespect to NC State, but I think you've got a pretty elite thing going on that you start to add too much, it just waters it down. I don't know, NC State by themselves waters it down, but do you have to have both? I don't think so. I think that can work itself out politically with some certain concessions and whatnot, but that's an interesting thing to follow with the whole ACC saga for sure, because there are those thoughts that that's something you're going to have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. On the UT topic, UT parking, you're right. UT fans here wear a scarlet letter, but we still like the show and community. Thank you. We appreciate it. I even mentioned that even if we disagree, and sometimes there's a lot of disagreement, it's still, this is what we do. We cover college football. Thank you for that, and all the other ones, and Paxton and Sandra Green and whoever that come popping in here at times too.
Yeah, I totally get that, but we're also, like you said, we're not beholden to the Big 12. I mean, that is the majority of what we'll talk about and focus in on, but, it's also a situation where you're doing 15 hours of talking a week, and I don't know that we're going to fill that with just KU season previews.
Oh, hell yes, we are.
And Iowa State defensive breakdowns in mid-February. So
we'll have all 14 of the coaches on the show.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a 1 hour a week or 2 hour or 2 1 hour shows a week, then we wouldn't need to talk about Texas at all. But there's content, and there's hours to fill, but I also think in some cases what he's saying is interesting. You're talking about a 9-game SEC schedule. I think that's interesting, just college football wise, period, Texas or not. So that's something that is a big departure, especially when you think about all of the complaints over the years about uneven conference scheduling. You think about the gimme teams that we always complain about in November with the SEC. Well, that's evolving and changing. So I think for that reason, not just it being Texas, if that was the Auburn AD that said that, we'd be talking about it. So
no, I completely agree. Here's some great stuff. Troy Urbanky, longtime Baylor fan, don't stop UT and Oklahoma talk. Just don't let it override everything else.
Sure, yeah,
when
absolutely.
Depends on the day. Barry Crawford, Smokey, if tomorrow the SEC offered Oklahoma State, Texas Tech joining, they both jump ship as well. And then you'd have people in here mad about talking about Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. You're right. That's
absolutely
and that's
right.
what we said from the beginning. Everyone that was angry about Texas, the latest part of it, or Oklahoma, they would all love to have had that phone call or at least that discussion or had that opportunity to move on.
Don't get me wrong, too. Like, we are going to always be, focused on the Big 12 and never going to change that whatsoever. But, yeah, there are other things out there to talk about of interest, and we will do all of that. Doesn't have to be one or the other. That's the beautiful part. Doesn't have to be either or. We can do both, and we will do both.
Yep, we will. From UT Parking, love the show. High-profile guest, plus I grew up with the Big 12 Conference. It feels weird not affiliating with the Big 12. UT Parking, thank you. And, again, we do enjoy the splintered amount of different fan bases, even some that are not. I mean, UCF, remember, just all of a sudden a lot of fans latched onto us because of the information. BYU and now even the schools that are a part of the next wave of the Big 12. But we will and continue to cover college football as the stories dictate that. When we come back, Rob Dauster covers college basketball and his thoughts about many things we've seen so far. It's still early to talk about March Madness. It's still early to talk about maybe who's going to make the tournament, but is it? Because now we're talking about February is done in about, 2 weeks. So we'll have Rob Dauster on that and more, and this is 365 Sports.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. When it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB, your bank for life, is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared afford to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, PettyClinicLowT.com.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Rob Dauster, the field of 68, with us on 365 Sports. I saw a stat last night watching some of the wrap-up shows. I'm not sure where exactly it was, but the top 10 teams in the AP this year are 34-34 against unranked teams, which, you know, you're going to have some upsets in the Big 12. There's like 5 teams hanging outside the top 25 that can beat anybody. Why is that, though, you think, this year? Because it appears to be the best record ever unranked against top 10 in AP poll history.
You know, I think it's twofold. For starters, I think that with, you know, the lack of the superstars coming in as freshmen this year, and the fact that most of the best players, most of the veterans tend to be upper class, tend to be big men, that what you're seeing is that the best teams in the country don't quite have that same level of elite player and elite talent that we've seen in some of the past seasons, right? And when you combine that with the fact that the rest of the pack, you know, the teams that are in that like 25 to 60 range that are kind of somewhere on the bubble, like 4th, 5th, 6th places in their conference, the gap is closed because they're able to get guys that are 4th year, 5th year, 6th year players that are able to be eligible immediately. So you get some of these, you know, guys that are juniors or seniors at the mid-major ranks that are able to transfer up and be eligible immediately. That makes them that much better at the highest level right away. So I think the gap is closed between the elite teams in college basketball and the teams that are kind of in, you know, let's just call them like the 6 seeds or the 7 seeds or whatever it would end up being. And when you combine that with the fact that the best teams in the country just aren't quite as good as they were in like 2015, 2016, kind of, you're going to see a lot more upsets. And, you know, the funny part of it is, all right, so let's talk about the Texas Tech-Kansas game on Monday night, for example, right? If you go back and you look at the betting lines, Texas Tech was a 3.5-point favorite. So while that is an upset by ranking, and I will definitely call it an upset because those narratives of, well, a top 10 team lost on the road, it's an upset, I think is great for the sport. The team that was favored by the Sharps in Vegas ended up winning that game. Now, they won by 29. They were favored by 3.5, but they were still favored. So people kind of realize when this stuff is happening, but it's just we always talk about parity in college basketball. I think more than ever, it is something that we are seeing this year.
Does that then open up the door for more teams that can win the national title than usually? It's not like college football. There's like 3 to 5. In basketball, you could have what we had last year with Florida Atlantic and obviously with the San Diego State. But has that number perhaps grown, or is it about the same?
I think that there's probably more teams that can make a Final Four this year than in some of the recent seasons, but I don't think it necessarily means there's more teams that can win a national championship, because being able to be at that level for 6 straight games, especially once you get past the first weekend where you basically are pretty much guaranteed to be playing a very, very, very good team for 4 straight games, you got to be a certain level of great to do that. And that's why we see a lot of times the teams that can kind of make that run and sneak into the Final Four aren't able to pull it out and win a national championship. And I think that's probably going to end up being the case this year as well. But the beauty of college basketball is you just never know. You just never know who's going to be able to kind of make those runs. So it's why the NCAA tournament is the absolute best way to determine a champion and the absolute worst way to try to figure out who the best team in college basketball is.
Rob Dauster with us on 365 Sports. KU has 5 conference losses. We know that McCullers missed time, but every team right now has a player that's out or beat up or whatever, sometimes multiple. What's happened with them other than the fact that it's obviously, I use this term, a battering ram in the Big 12, but they've always had, kind of a battering ram, and they've always had maybe 2, 3, or 4 conference losses at the most. Why is this year more difficult for Bill Self?
I mean, I think it's the obvious, right? They don't have the same level of depth. They don't have the same level of balance that we've seen in the past. And, there's a reason why people can kind of say, like, you're as strong as your weakest link, right? Mm-hmm. And it's become clear where you can attack this Kansas team. And that is at the wing spot, right? Whoever is kind of playing that off-guard, 2-guard role, whether that's Nick Timberlake or Johnny Furphy, those are the guys that you can kind of go after. And when you combine that with the fact that DeJuan Harris is not exactly the most efficient offensive weapon, and Kevin McCullough probably is shooting closer to what he naturally is as a shooter in Big 12 play than what he was doing in the non-conference. And there's no depth. At the end of the day, this is a long season. It starts in September for a lot of these guys. By the time you get to mid-February, a lot of them are worn down. They're banged up. They need some rest. They need some time to kind of make sure that the wear and tear on their bodies isn't going to be too much. And you're not able to get that when you're having to do what they have to do, Kansas that is, and play that many guys every single night. So it'll be very interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out for Kansas, because I do think that their top 4 is as good as any top 4 in college basketball when they're healthy. But you need like a rotation of like 7 guys is probably the sweet spot, and they just don't have that right now.
Baylor exploded last night against Oklahoma, and they have had like 4 losses that have been down to the last possession or so, but they did explode. None was nuts last night. But Jacoby Walter, who is incredibly talented, has had his moments, but it's not been a night in and night out alpha like you hear about with some of the one and dones, which we hear that maybe a little bit too much. How much and how far can they go without Jacoby Walter at times taking over a game?
I think they can go a really long way. To me, it's less about Jacoby Walter, and it's more about how well are they going to guard, right? How well are they going to defend? To me, that's the one. I've said this to you before, Smoak. Like, it's when Baylor was at their best, right? The 2020 season, the 2021 season, the 2022 season before they had to deal with all those injuries. They weren't just a great offensive team. They were one of the nation's best defensive teams, right? They were able to do it on both ends of the floor, and I just don't know if you have that this year with this group. And you can win. You can beat anybody in the country. Like, if you just have an explosive offense, you can go out and put up 100 points on anybody. Like, you can win a game against anyone. But if you are relying on having to have your A game offensively every single night to be able to win in March, like that's just not going to happen. We know that's not going to happen. It's impossible to rely on being able to hit like 50% of your threes every single night. If you can do that, that's how teams would build their offenses, right? And you got to be able to have nights where you win games with your defense. And I just am not convinced that they have enough talent, they have enough switchability, they have enough guys that are going to be elite on that end of the floor to be able to do it. And I would put Kentucky in that same conversation. I put Alabama in that same conversation. I would not be surprised to see Alabama win any game on any court against anybody that they play. Same thing with Kentucky. It would not surprise me to see them beat literally anybody in college basketball. The same token, I would not be surprised to see Baylor lose to a 14th seed in the first round because it's the night where they shoot 3 for 18 from 3 and the other team's guards just find a way to get going because there's not enough defenders, right? Like, it's just, they're one of those teams where their highs and their lows are very, very different. And I would never bet on, like, it's very difficult for me to sit here and say, like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bet against Scott Drew in the first round of the tournament. That doesn't seem like a very smart idea, but, you know, it's the way that they're built. I would not be the most shocked in the world if that happened.
All right, so yesterday we had Mac Rhodes on our show, Baylor's director of athletics, and we asked about Kelvin Sampson had Mac's back. As you know, Mac got mad, said a few things, was kind of in control, but said him was fined. He should have been fined. That, so you have to do that. But then Sampson made the comment, I've learned that if you tell the truth, you get fined $25,000 like Mac Rhodes. So you had Scott Drew ejected, then Sampson ejected, and then Bill Self ejected. 3 Hall of Fame type coaches. Is this just how things are starting to catch up in the conference because it is such a beatdown week in and week out, or is there an issue when it comes to the officiating at that conference level?
I think that if you are seeing the 3 best coaches in the league get ejected from games when they almost never, ever get ejected from games, you probably have an officiating issue, right? The one with Scott Drew is, that's like, I kind of, and I don't like saying this about Scott, but I kind of feel like he was asking for that one because it was the coach's box thing. And like, he did that thing where, I don't know, like, if people are listening, if you got kids, where they're just trying to figure out where the line is, and push the line, and all of a sudden they go across the line and they're leaning over, and you know, all of a sudden out of nowhere they have they're getting ejected from the game, right? And they're getting in trouble. So I think that was just a little bit different. But like Kelvin Sampson and Bill Self, you could very much tell that they were trying to make a point when they were getting tossed. Like that's what they were trying to do in those specific situations. So it just kind of is what it is, right? Like I do think that there is an issue with what they are on with what the officials are calling. I think it's too physical in the Big 12. You know, I'd like to see them be able to call it a little bit tighter to open those games up, because at some point, like, we're trying to watch basketball. It's not supposed to be a rugby match, but you know, it is what it is, man. That's the way that the Big 12 became really, really good, and that's kind of what people expect out of it at this point.
Last thing, Ross Dellinger yesterday had a bunch of stuff about college football playoff to everything. One of the things he discussed was there's still that push about expanding the NCAA men's basketball tournament from 68. And I even think he used the word, I'm not sure if it was imminent or something close to that. I love it the way it is right now. What say you?
Don't expand it.
Thank you. Yeah.
You don't need to ruin the best. The problem is the people that are making these decisions are not people that love the sport. Like, they're not fans. Right? The people that are making this decision are not the people that are going to sit there on Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament since they were 8 years old and watch this stuff and fill out brackets and sit with their mom and their dad and their siblings and their friends and just sweat out all of these games, right? They're the people that they're out to make money. They're out to figure out how to make profit off of this. They're about the bottom line. They're about being able to bring as much money into the universities that they work for, the conferences that they work for, as possible. And that's where the ultimate disconnect is. You know, at the end of the day, the thing that's going to make the most money is not what's going to be the best experience for the viewer and for the fan and for the people sitting at home that are trying to enjoy this product. And that is where the disconnect lies. That's never going to change. That's always going to be there. There's always going to be that push and that pull. And it's a shame, because I don't think that they ruin it if they expand the tournament and they keep the auto bid nature, right? Like, if we got to watch an extra round of games, like, I run a business that relies on March quite a bit. Like, that's probably not the worst thing in the world. If they are able to make sure that, you know, mid-major regular season champions have access to the NCAA tournament as well, maybe it won't be the worst thing that's ever happened. My idea is that you expand to 76 teams, right? You have 60 automatic qualifiers, which means you have 16 teams for the last 4 spots. You take those 16 teams and break them into groups of 4, and each of those groups of 4 go to a different historical venue, whether it's maybe Fall Gallon Fieldhouse, Dayton Arena, the Palestra in Philadelphia, and you have a 4-game kind of mini NTE tournament where you play 2 games on a Tuesday. Then on the Wednesday, you play the championship of that little section, and then that team advances and ends up being like the 11 seed in the region or a 12 seed in the region, and you use that for the last 16 at-large qualifiers. Heck, you know what? Then we get Tuesday and Wednesday where you have all of these unbelievable games and unbelievable action, and then it's just 2 more days of NCAA tournament stuff. But if we're talking about going to 96 and saying that every single high major team in college basketball makes the tournament, like that, we don't need DePaul in the NCAA tournament. No one is sitting here clamoring to see Georgetown play in March Madness, right? It's not like we need to say, hey, you know what? West Virginia's been a complete and total mess this entire season. Well, let's get them into March because they deserve it, because that athletic department needs to make more money that they can waste on NIL for Kirk Crease and it's just, come on, man. Like, you have something that is wonderful and is great and is the best product in all of sports. You own the month of March. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it just chasing an extra dollar. You got to make enough money as it is.
Rob Dauster, the Field of 68. It's also the Field of 68 on Twitter, also online. Terrence Oglesby, John Fanta, Jeff Goodman, Rob, all sorts of great guests that you have. Rob, thanks for your time as always. Great stuff with what you do.
Thanks, man. Always good to catch up.
Rob Dauster on 365 Sports.
There we go, Rob Dauster. Again, it's a great website. If you haven't watched it, college basketball galore, and they do almost, I believe, nightly a summary on what's going on in college basketball from coast to coast. All right, coming up, a couple of notes, including we mentioned helmet devices in college football. What's the protocol of when a player and a coach can communicate? And when did they cut it off? We'll have that and more. And will that be the case when it comes to college football? Not the test drive we saw during bowl games, but once the ACC and others do have helmet devices going forward. This is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, LowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty and his staff can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be. And what that means is as you grow older, 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Maybe that's you. Maybe it's me. It's 1 out of every 3 or 4 men. What does that mean? You don't sleep the same. Your energy's not the same. Your focus is not the same. You're gaining weight, belly fat. And on top of that, you're having issues in the bedroom, sex drive, ED, whatever. That can be connected to testosterone. And Low T, Petty Clinic, LowT.com can help you with that by getting you into see a doctor. They'll draw your blood. You get the blood results. He gets the results. And then maybe your testosterone level is too low. Dr. Kent Petty and his staff can help you increase your testosterone levels to become the high-performance man you want to be. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic, LowT.com.
February is here, and so are the big savings during the President's Day sale at Allen Samuels in Waco. New inventory is out on the lot right now and ready for immediate delivery. Ram 1500 is the most luxurious and technologically advanced Ram 1500 ever. Looking for an SUV? Have your pick of a Jeep Grand Cherokee, Compass, and Renegades. Need a mid-size truck to get the job done? Drive a new Jeep Gladiator. President's Day sale event is a winner at Allen Samuels in Waco. Come by. Let's be friends.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help.
Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Alan Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Alan Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 superfan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
5:26 on this Valentine's Day Wednesday, February the 14th. Couple of notes here. Heather Dinich had this story. It is the upcoming 100th anniversary of the Four Horsemen. Woo! Notre Dame.
Ric Flair, Arn Anderson.
Returned to Yankee Stadium in November. Not Ric Flair, who was what team did he like? Who was the?
He's liked them all at various
the
points.
NFL teams, though.
Carolina Panthers was who he's from Charlotte.
Detroit, too, with Dan Campbell, right?
He's been everywhere. He's a Texas Tech guy last year.
Wherever they pay him to
exactly
go.
Right.
Who's the entertainer, the rapper that follows Team Drake?
Yeah. No. Although, if you did tell me it was the 100th anniversary of the Four Horsemen, based on the way that Ric Flair looks now, I'd be like, yeah.
Ric Flair's a fan of Paydays. That's the team that he roots for. So yeah, I mean, you get a speaking gig with him, and he'll definitely put some sauce on your social media or your team meeting or whatever. But yeah, that's the Four Horsemen I'm thinking of. You're obviously talking about somebody different than
it doesn't matter now. But I wanted you to. You were in Vegas with us last week. They had Razor Ramon. Who was the one?
Dead.
Roman Reigns.
Yeah, who?
Roman Reigns.
Roman Reigns and
The Rock.
The Rock were in Vegas. I cannot believe that you missed that opportunity.
That was, Razor Ramon's dead. R.I.P. Scott Hall. But,
had he been there, that would have really been something.
Yeah, that would have been incredible.
But everybody stop laughing.
Yeah, Roman Reigns and The Rock, they had that big press conference out there in Vegas. I guess just because the Super Bowl was there, because I don't think that's where I know that's not where WrestleMania is, but that's, the build-up, the road to WrestleMania and all that. They had a big old press conference, and that's the only thing I wish I would have been there for, honestly. I mean, there's not really any other part of the ride that I'm like, oh, dang, I missed this or missed that. And I don't even really, that doesn't make me want to change my mind. Like, oh, I should have gone for that one simple press conference. But that would have been cool to see if I was there, because it seemed like a very spirited and kind of a fun event to be a part of.
We haven't talked about our Vegas trip. We need to do that here in this next segment along with this. But let's get back to Notre Dame Army Shamrock Series at Yankee Stadium, the 100th anniversary of the fabled Four Horsemen. Announced today, they'll play November 23rd, and commemorating that famous Irish backfield of Jim Crowley, Elmer Layden, Don Miller, and Harry Stuhldreher. Those players, immortalized by Grantland Rice in the New York Times or the New York Herald Tribune, a 13-7 upset of Army back in 1924.
Don't meet a lot of Elmers anymore.
Yeah, there's certainly.
Don't think I ever have actually. Maybe once upon a time.
I'm thinking about Elwin.
I just saw him. He was in Vegas last week. I saw him. You
guys are buddies.
Oh, I'll tell you.
Traded text with him.
He and his girlfriend were sitting on the floor eating lunch because there weren't tables. And I walked past because I was going. It was at the Dahani Jones, Sean Alexander booth where they had the kids giving out sandwiches. And they were there, and so I talked to him, and
you missed him.
Go Gilmer Buckeyes, all that.
All right, the NFL communication helmets, which we discussed based on the ACC, is going to use those, and maybe other conferences if the NCAA approves it. The communication begins once a game official has signaled a down to be over. So, in other words, as soon as the down is over, they can open up the communication, coach, whoever it is, and players. It's cut off when the play clock reaches 15 seconds or the ball is snapped, which could be snapped before 15 seconds. Whichever occurs first, each offensive and defensive team permitted no more than one player on the field with a speaker in his helmet. So that's one thing to think about. The bowl games, I believe the Texas Tech game in Cal, they left it open almost the entire time. Does it matter?
I mean, I think there could be some advantage to it. Also, I wouldn't want it open the whole time. Like, could you imagine trying to throw the ball down the field and the coach is going, 18, 18, 18, 18. You're like, maybe that hurt word for some people, but for me, I'd be like, dude, just give me a second.
A longtime offensive assistant said, you've got to have a sharp guy, but you have to have quiet time before a snap hits. You got to have some type of just get, focused on the actual snap of the play, whether on offense or defense, because the coach trying to whisper into a quarterback's ear right before the snap could create havoc. Now, damn it, I just forgot what I was going to talk about. Oh, Vegas. Mm-hmm. Garrett, what was your best memory of our time in Vegas? And it needs to be anything goes here.
Oh, man. For me, meeting Trey of ABN, that was pretty cool. And then the Mob Museum. Definitely those two things.
Trey the Truth was
Trey
there?
the Truth. I saw Trey. Dude, I freaked out.
Oh, my God. So we're on the air. Garrett's got the headsets. We have an L-shaped table. Emery's on the right of me. Paul's in the corner, and then Garrett. And Garrett lurches out of his chair.
I popped up.
I mean, like, I've never seen you work. I mean, like, you have some athlete in you.
A little bit. It's there.
He was in front of that guy. Who?
Trey.
I mean, like, I didn't know that you had a crush on him or a fan of him.
Now.
Big fan.
Huge.
Big fan.
I loved it for you.
I did. I mean, it was cool to see a lot of people there. The athletes, I've kind of being in this, I've kind of grown to view athletes as just other people.
Thank you. There's me right there.
Just a
There's
human.
me.
And I do that most of the way. That one, though, caught me by surprise. That was the last person I was expecting to see there. And I was like, oh, crap. Yeah, I'm not missing this opportunity.
Yeah, that was me. I'm spoiled to have been to a lot of Radio Rows, so I understand that. But it's like there's Joe Montana. It's like it's cool, but I'm just not like, oh my God, it's Joe Montana, like I was the first 15 times that I saw Joe Montana or somebody like that. So for me, when I have been there, the top 5 people that I've seen are probably all non-football or athletes. They're like, it's Charlotte Flair. Speaking of the Flairs, and she was there. That was bigger than seeing like the Steelers legend Hall of Famer guy, or Terry Bradshaw. I guess we could just use a name there. That to me, Conor McGregor, seeing him was bigger than any football player that I ever came across on Radio Row. So to see those types of folks that are your non-traditional Radio Row, I agree. That was always most exciting to me. So I loved it when the UFC guys and the pro wrestling guys would come out. But Trey, I mean, been listening to him for 30 years now at this point.
At least,
That's a Texas legend and an institution in Texas hip-hop.
Where's he from in Texas?
H-Town.
H-Town, all right.
So, that's a cool little cameo there.
Chuck Liddell was there, and he looks like he's gained some weight. He's no longer active, but he could still knock the crap out of you.
He hadn't fought in like 20 years.
Yeah,
so yeah.
And his mohawk is much thinner than it was. He had a little bit of a gut. So I went over to him and got him to
man.
say hi to Craig. Just put a little 5-second video together. It's like Craig would like that.
Yeah,
There's nobody else that was there, you would have liked that.
The last time I saw him, he got us all deathly sick, so that was awesome.
San Francisco, right?
Yeah, I was about to go up and punch him just for that. No,
I mean, legit, he did though. He was sick. He was sick. He was dog sick, and it was the last day, and he just had all the congestion. You could just feel the sickness coming off of him, and then sure enough, we all get back to home, and I think all of us were sick that next week at some point or another.
It like staggered through.
Yeah.
It was basically, if you went who got sick first and who got sick last, it was 1 to 5 of who was standing closest to him.
Did I get sick?
Yeah, you got sick.
I don't
Everybody
know if I was
did.
even around him. I may have missed that
but
one.
But we were all, well, of course, then you were around us. But like, if you went, like you and Q got sick first because you were right across from him. I was standing behind you guys taking pictures, and then it was me, and then it was like it just went that way.
Did you get?
I got sick.
Okay,
I got the same. I couldn't breathe because my nose was so stopped. I just remember that because I remember how sick he was while we were interviewing him. Going like, gosh, he probably shouldn't be here.
Can you imagine?
I'm not kidding. Like he probably shouldn't have been here. And sure enough, we all got sick the next week. But that was the last time until last week that I'd seen Chuck Liddell. So glad that Iceman's feeling better all these years later.
Yeah.
I of the watcher, Ric Flair did go to school in Minnesota.
Yes.
Kyle Visser, woo! The Ric Flair special on Netflix is very entertaining.
Yeah, Flair is from Minnesota, but he's claimed Carolina for ever and ever and ever and ever now. Yeah.
First names, what was it, Elmer? Kyle Visser, you don't mean a lot of Adolphs either. I think that name has been retired.
I don't think that one's in the rotation very much. No.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Kyle.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, Paul. Emery's got to give us his, too, because he was there. He's never been there before. Paul, your best moment?
Well, hold on. Why was Trey there? Just promoting his...
He was there as a guest, just rotating through.
So, he owns Bump Box.
Oh, okay,
and each NFL team had customized bump boxes.
You're talking about the big boom boxes
like
that every team that can roll out. Yeah.
So he was bringing them in, and
thank you for explaining what a bump box is.
They had a gigantic cart of rolling around. I don't know if they were giving them out to people or what they were doing. We didn't get one.
Somebody could have given me one, and I was like, "What the hell is this?"
That's cool though.
Yeah. So that was cool. My favorite, and look, obviously, I was very excited to talk to Darren Woodson, but we've done that before, and I hope we do it again.
We might have to, unless his time's running out.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I love talking to Darren Woodson. That was great. But I thought my favorite interview we did was Roy Choi, the chef. Because I love that movie. I love what Roy does. I love what he stands for, about kind of being one of the last warriors of the small business world when it comes to food trucks and how he helped with that. And he could not have been more friendly and enthusiastic to hear what we had to say about everything. It was a true conversation. It was just really great. And the bartender at the Mob Museum, I'm telling you right now.
He's a legend.
Is a legend. He was and it's not about the drinks. It's about telling me all this stuff while he's making it. I was fascinated. I was in my element. It was so awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
I didn't go to that. I was at a comedy club with the microphones being different levels. Good friend Jose Feliciano was one of the sponsors. It was LaDainian Tomlinson, Larry Centers, Too Tall Jones, Jake Plummer, and I hope I'm forgetting somebody else. And it just immediately poof, like that because the sound wasn't very good. It just could not hear really what anyone was saying. And so I got up and left. I got up and left.
Look, man,
that's your best. That's not your best memory, obviously, right? But that's the one that stands out to you.
I don't know if I had one. I think it was babysitting.
You didn't have a Trey moment or a Mob Museum.
There wasn't one. The Roy Choi was great. He actually...
You liked that movie,
a little bit
Chef,
later on. Yeah, I know. It's a great movie. And who suggested that? You did.
I did.
Yeah, you did. It was a great movie. A little bit later on, I bumped into him with the lady that was his PR person, and he said, "Come on over," but we were leaving. It would have been too late. We couldn't do that. But retired stockbroker, you gave Craig, appreciate it. By the way, a great life for his great career.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't quite understand exactly, but yeah, I appreciate it.
I don't know about the great life, but I know that you've enjoyed your career. But
great life for this great. Yeah, I mean, thank you. And I understand when I say too, and I don't know if you're hanging on to this part of it or not, but the whole, I don't not respect Joe Montana walking into the room. It's just that I don't get blown away by it anymore. I've just, but I definitely I'm still like, hey, that's cool. That's Joe Montana. That's John Elway. Early years, it would be, Adrian Peterson. I've always and will always be an Adrian Peterson fan. And so to see him on Radio Row like 10 years ago was very cool. But just at this point, having gotten older and kind of, I guess, jaded to it, but that sounds too negative. I just am more blown away when I see a Hollywood person or a musician or a pro wrestler or UFC guy. That's just, to me, more of a whoa, wow, there's Conor McGregor. There's Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was there. That's somebody I would have wanted to talk to. I don't know if we would have been able to or not, but yeah, that would have been probably what I would have liked to have done.
I don't know if there was.
There were
too many. You saw, what's his name again? Your buddy, the one you like,
Trey.
Yeah. There weren't a lot.
Lil Dicky was there.
Lil Dicky, yeah. Lil Dicky was there.
Lil Dicky was there.
Lil Dicky, yeah. Dave Bird is a comedian, actor,
Bert
rapper.
Kreischer.
Yeah, that show you watch on FX all the time. That Dave, that you watch all the time.
Bert Kreischer was there on Friday. Tom Segura was there with him. We missed that,
yep.
but those were like the biggest Hollywood type.
There wasn't
doesn't
like
sound
the
like
Black
there's-
Eyed Peas walking through there like there was when we were in Dallas.
Right, no.
Yeah.
or Sandler, or
I remember when Beyonce walked through the room one time and just everybody stopped and obviously pulled out their phones.
Except for Q, who ran and ran around the press conference they were having. They used to have the press conference for the halftime act in the middle of Radio Row.
Right.
They quit doing that after Beyonce, and I think for the reason of Q, people like Q were just running laps around trying to
get a glimpse
and
or
get
a
a glimpse
picture.
of,
Yeah.
of Beyonce.
We saw him. Of course, he's doing Vegas radio on Radio Row. Went out to dinner with him one night. He said hello. And,
Good deal.
And he's doing really, really well. Saw his wife Teresa was there, and they seemed to be settled in pretty well. Let's see here. Craig, do you remember Forrest Griffin? He was a bad man.
Yeah, he was him and Stephen Bonner, R.I.P. Stephen Bonner. But that ended tragically. But those two were at the heart of the UFC being what it is today. Without those two and their fight night fight back in the day, then the UFC is probably still very successful, but I don't know that it happens the way that it happened and happens as quickly as it seemed to explode and turn into what it turned into. So, yeah, Forrest Griffin would have been, I think we have seen him maybe
I'm sure,
in the year
there
past.
wasn't a lot of UFC guys.
Dana White was there. I saw Dana White a couple
Dana White, we talked to
regular.
him a couple years ago. That was really cool, or I guess it was longer than a couple years ago. But, Dana White was definitely one of those. I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. But, Forrest Griffin was a hell of a fighter and a big he'll always have a place in the UFC for that Stephen Bonner fight in particular.
Let's see here. I got a couple more. Paxton would say UFC. I say UCF every once in a while because we're a Big 12 following the Big 12. Scotty B, one time I was so close to Kirk Herbstreit, one time on the sidelines at a Baylor football game, 2019 against Oklahoma before getting in my seats for a game. Yeah, Kirk Herbstreit, I remember covering a football game that he hosted back in Columbus, Ohio, back in 2005. Good dude. Not everybody likes him. His opinion gets shredded at times.
Here recently, he hits,
Catalina loves him.
I never minded him before, and then he
You know what? I thought about this. I don't know what it was the other day, but you know what we've become, and I don't say like now, but if you don't like someone's opinion, you want to blast them and just hate them. I see that a lot now. Instead of just I actually think he's a nice guy. We've met him before. I mean, he's been on the show before. He's a nice guy. I completely disagree with his opinion, and I'm a little cross with him. But I wouldn't kick him in the shins if I saw him. Yeah, but it's like if you don't. I mean, these are opinions, and there's probably some that I've done that with too. But it just seems like people just either You agree with somebody, you don't, and if you don't, you hate them.
But I don't
get that feeling. And maybe it's social media.
Yeah, I think you need to get off Twitter. Forrest Griffin was a bad man, Paxton. He really was. But I think that you can do that. I think though that we probably sometimes just look at the extreme opinions and then just take those as everybody's opinions because there's going to be so we got to stop doing that because there's absolutely somebody who now hates Kirk Herbstreit, who's a Florida State fan. because of what he had to say. But then I think there's plenty of Florida State fans, like Paul just said, who are like, yeah, he was a douchebag for saying what he said during the playoff selection, but that doesn't mean I'm never going to watch him again, or I'm going to unfollow him, or I'm going to block him or hate him or anything like that. So, yeah, I think that's the majority, but that's just not what you hear as loudly as some of the other more extreme reactions.
I agree. Kyle Visser, I was taking my daughter into acting class a few years ago, walked into a room with the teacher, and J-Lo was sitting there.
Oh, that's a megastar of a different level. Right
there you go.
I mean, that's, I mentioned seeing Beyonce, and it was literally her walking through a room, basically. But that's the same kind of caliber level of a star that's just elite level.
The most impressed I've ever been with myself and Smokey when we saw Celebrity was, so the first year we did Super Bowl, the Black Eyed Peas were walking around, and they were going to their thing. And then the third year, I guess, would have been New Orleans, or the fourth year. Maybe there was another one in there. But we went to Indianapolis when they did the Super Bowl, and they hosted it really well. The room was really small, though, and they had fans in there. But the day they did the press conference, the halftime show was Madonna. And so Madonna comes into Radio Row, and in my head, I see Dick Tracy Madonna. I see Like a Virgin Madonna.
League of Their Own.
I see League of Their Own Madonna. And then what was in front of me was the corpse of Madonna.
Hocus Pocus.
And
that was 10 years ago.
Everybody was like flipping out, and Smokey and I were like, ooh. Like both of us like, ooh. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the last year she's had some pictures she's put up on social media, and she's definitely trying to, I guess, maintain her youth, I suppose. But yeah, that's
she is not doing it.
Yeah, well,
Father time, mother time, or whatever it is, it wins.
I mean, she's a megastar though. But yeah, that's a cool part about the whole Super Bowl trip, is you do get some brushes with certain types of people that you wouldn't otherwise get. And yeah, for me, there's a segment that I always got thrilled to see, and so yeah, that would have been cool to see Trey. But other than that, I don't think I missed out too much.
My closest to anything was the first ever Super Bowl, Century Plaza Hotel, L.A. And I got put into this room that was a suite. It was crazy. We had a lot of people but like Reggie Howe, the late Reggie Howe, Jose, etc. They came to stay with me, and I'll never forget, before they got there, I had to walk about 50 yards to the other side of the Century Plaza Hotel, which I did not realize, but my name is the same name of this billionaire in Nebraska. And he was going to be in the suite. They checked me in. So I'm on my way to the elevator to go up one night. I open up the elevator doors kind of closed. Ding, it opens back up. And there's three big dudes and Whitney Houston.
Oh, wow.
And I think Whitney Houston, first of all, her voice was miraculous and beautiful woman. And I did that. That was the closest to anything truly. Now, if I ever bumped into Elton, I don't know what I would do.
Right.
I don't know what they'd do to me. Just
Now-
because I'd love them, I just think he's the best
So
ever.
the most random that we've ever had, I'll tell you, is when we were in Albuquerque covering the NCAA tournament. We had to do our show from 8 to 11 in the morning before the game started, because we had to carry the games on our signal. And so Smokey and I are doing this morning show, and we're at this huge hotel in Albuquerque where all the teams are staying, all the cheerleaders are staying, and also the entire cast of The Lone Ranger except for Johnny Depp. So they were shooting The Lone Ranger in Albuquerque, and throughout the day, the dude who played Ike Clanton in the bad guy he was Ike Clanton in Tombstone. He was the bad guy. Stephen Lang is his name. He was he was the bad guy in Avatar. He was there, and I was like, why is Ike Clanton here? And then I just see other character actors walking around.
I would never have noticed any of them unless it was Val Kilmer or Russell.
Later in the week, a couple days later, it was on our off day. I was going downstairs to meet everybody to go to lunch, and I got in the elevator, and I just laid in the leaned up on the back, and Helena Bonham Carter from Fight Club and Harry Potter and all these other things, who's Academy Award winning actress, just walks in with her security team on the elevator, and I was just and she's like, "Oh, hello," and I was like, Hi.
Yeah, I love her.
Bellatrix Lestrange.
Yeah, she'd have been cool to see.
Yeah, it was like I was like, and then at that point, it finally occurred to me, like, oh, they must be making a movie here somewhere that all these people are here. Like, why would Helena Bonham Carter be in Albuquerque, New Mexico for any reason?
She was there to watch Baylor against Colorado.
Big ticket.
Wet blanket. I had birthday dinner with Larry Bird once. Wow, that's pretty good. That's really, really cool. All right, when we come back, we wrap up this Wednesday show, Paul Catalina and the Top 5.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 coaches that could follow Chip Kelly's path from head coach to coordinator or out of college football potentially. And these are 5 guys. One of them hasn't worked in a year, but I do think that when he comes back, he'll be on this path. So that's this guy. Number 5, David Shaw, former Stanford head coach. I just think that, look, he was already recruiting, up against it at Stanford, where you had a very narrow window of people that you could recruit because of the academic standards. Now you throw NIL and everything into the mix and how complicated it is. I think when we see David Shaw again, he'll be an NFL assistant.
Yeah, I mean, that would make some sense. He's a really talented guy. A lot of people respect the job that he does, and Stanford is not an easy gig for anybody, has it been, but he had some great success there. And, I think that he would definitely be a guy you could see making that type of a leap.
Yeah, I don't think he's going back to college, unless it's a mega job. I don't think he's going to go back, but he was at one time the rising star. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, that didn't work out well. Stanford kind of fell apart.
But before he went to Stanford, he had multiple years in the NFL as an assistant coach. Yep. So he's definitely not a newbie to the NFL coaching ranks. So, yeah, I could definitely see him as somebody who's on TV and does that type of a gig. I could definitely see that, and that would be probably the less stressful option for him, but still lucrative.
Number 4, Tom Herman. Look, he's at Florida Atlantic right now. That seems to be going okay for him. But if he doesn't get, another big gig, and he's a high-strung dude anyway. He went to the NFL for a couple years or for a little bit and was with the Bears on their staff, and then came back and was with Florida Atlantic. I could just see him going, you know what, I'm going to go to the NFL. I'm going to go be a coordinator or a position coach in the NFL.
We got a taste of it with Chicago, right?
He got a taste of it. Like, maybe he's trying to get back in, but I don't think if he can get a bigger job than Florida Atlantic and then wrap his arms around the new world, it wouldn't surprise me, especially given how, again, high-strung, intense he gets, that maybe the NFL is just better for him personally.
Yeah, I'll disagree here. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'll be happy to be wrong. But, I mean, he's really been a college guy his whole career. That's what he is. He had an analyst job with Chicago for that year. But what did he do after that? He came to Florida Atlantic to be their head coach and to get back into the college ranks. So I think there's always going to be a place for Tom Herman in college football, like a place for him to be a head coach. And I don't know, with his personality, even though he's matured apparently and he's not the same guy mocking the other team on the sidelines during a bowl game, like that guy seems to have grown up a little bit, but he still seems like personality-wise he's still more accustomed or more suited for college football than he is for the NFL. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but I just have a hard time seeing him like lead an NFL team of young adults or adult men, and he just doesn't have that gravitas for me.
I would just think being a position coach.
A position coach, I'm thinking of head coaches only. Yeah. So, position coach, sure. But, I mean, he came back to college football pretty quick, so I think that's right now where his bread's butter. But we'll see how it goes in Boca Raton.
Yeah, the Chip Kelly path would be not being a head coach and just going. Yeah. Number 3, Justin Wilcox. I don't think that he is happy about the conference that his team is in. I think that he is probably stressed out by the resources that he is allocated by his university based on what other teams of their size get. And I could see him taking another college job and being successful and happy, but would it surprise me to see him you know what? I'm going to be a coordinator for a couple years, whether it's in college or pro, and just figure out my next move, because this going across the country to play all my games and this weird recruiting spot I'm in and all this, I could be just kind of done. Like, if I were him, I might be kind of done with it already.
Yeah, possibly. It's not the easiest job in the world, Cal. That's not the I guess the rosiest place at the moment either, with the whole conference move, as you mentioned. I know that he's been linked to other jobs in the past. I don't know about NFL type of an interest, and I haven't looked at his bio to see if has he even coached in the NFL before. I don't even know.
No, he's at Oregon, I know.
Yeah, but sure. I mean, as far as somebody getting tired of the college football landscape and all that comes with that, especially all the extra handcuffs that you have being at Cal versus being at a bigger school, I could see where that does wear on you a little bit.
No, never been in the NFL. So, but he's been other places
Got a
as
long
a
way to
defensive
go.
coordinator. But yeah, I would not surprise me to see. Well, I mean, like even the Chip Kelly, like, does Justin Wilcox maybe leave Cal and go be the defensive coordinator at like North Carolina or something? You know, like
possibly
something like that. Number 2, Billy Napier. His run at Florida has been rocky, to say the least, and it's not for his lack of trying. And no one has gotten rocked by the NIL thing worse than Billy Napier has, because he lost his number 1 quarterback recruit based on a faulty NIL deal. Plus, he's about to go through the biggest wood chipper of a schedule in the history of wood chipper schedules. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him maybe back down, go be an OC somewhere for a couple years, and restart the engines a little bit, because Florida, it should have been a lot smoother for him at a place like that, and it hasn't been. Maybe some of that's him, but they entered the NIL world and the new world a lot rockier than I thought a place that has as many resources as the Gators do would, right? I mean, like, they should have been set up for this for a long time, and then it just seems that they were ill prepared.
All right, are they better now than when he arrived?
I don't know.
I don't either.
They're not.
It's just like maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
They've won less games both years. So
it's been tumultuous.
Yeah. So yeah, it would not surprise me to see him just be like, you know what, I just got to step back for a minute and re-get my bearings. And number 1,
bearings. He's making big money unless he's told to leave.
Yeah. But number 1, Dave Aranda. He's very and again, if it doesn't work out at Baylor, he's probably going to be an assistant somewhere, you would think, next year. But and this is only if it didn't work out, if all the moves he's made, because this is a dude who is idealistic as anybody you're ever going to meet. And you can tell the uncomfortability with the way that things go and like how far. I mean, the question I asked him was like, how do you have to find what you're comfortable with doing to keep you competitive with the people who are comfortable with doing anything? Like, there are coaches and programs out there that are like, they don't have any. There's no ethical qualms.
You almost
about
said cutthroat.
Yeah, it's cutthroat. Like, they don't have any ethical qualms about the way they're getting players. That's where Dave Aranda is a very ethical dude. And so, like, he wrestles with those things. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him, like, if his head coaching tenure comes to an end, whether it be now or sometime in the future, to, again, take a step back and be a coordinator somewhere, just because, again, it's just he would never maybe be comfortable with it until there's more structure.
I mean, I think he'll be comfortable if they win games. I mean, that's all the NIL stuff and all the other different things that maybe are stressing out coaches. Those seem to not be as big of a deal as when you're winning games. Yeah. So when you haven't been winning, like he hasn't been winning for a year and a half now, or a season and a half, it's been very trying. But I think he's as much suited for high school football or being the head coach at like a service academy as he would be for. As far as other opportunities, that seems to be, more of the service aspect and the focus on faith and those types of things as much of his alley as anything. But if he just wants to coach football and cut out all of the noise, then yeah, the NFL could provide that for him. But I think if he wants to be a person who's, in service, not only in football, but on the field, then we'll see if college football's still set up for a guy like him moving forward. But like I said, I think high school football or service academy is more of where you'll find that these days. And I think he's trying to hold on to that somewhat at Baylor. But again, you have to win games. And so that's why I hope he wins some games, not only because it just makes everything better to cover, but because I want to believe that can work. And it doesn't have to all be dollar signs and, those types of things that make you successful, or that you have to have those things to be successful in college football. I would like to think that there's a way to develop the human being. I know there's other programs, big programs, like Kirby Smart develops young men and things. I'm sure Nick Saban developed young men. I'm not saying you can't have the big dollars and not do that, but I do think that's his focus. His focus is the pure game of football and the human being aspect and the faith aspect, and not all of this other stuff. But ultimately, you have to win games.
And he has changed his mind as he's needed to.
And he's had to evolve along the way.
Yeah.
But, I could see him taking a different route, but remaining in the game of football. So NFL-wise, I'm not sure how much interest he's gotten over the years, but certainly a lot of his former players are stacking up rosters right now.
I hope he's successful, not because we cover Big 12, Baylor, whatever. This guy here... But you just wonder if it's just going to get run into the ground because of the way the game is or how it's being run right now.
I want it for him.
Yeah.
And the coach,
I agree.
Nice, the cliche is nice guys finish last, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe that at all. But I think that there's a place in the world for Dave Aranda, brilliant, wonderful human beings like Dave Aranda is, a very compassionate man. There's a place for him to succeed.
However, he's getting paid a lot of money
Yes.
to win football games.
Yes. So I hope it goes that way for him, because, when you treat people right, you deserve to have that.
Either he wins this year or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, it's going to have to be for some unbelievable circumstances, because he's changed his staff now basically every year.
It's year 5.
Yes.
It's not like we're talking about it's year 3 and you've had an up. It's year 5. And so you've had, I think, more time here than you would have gotten at some other places.
I would say at almost every place.
Yeah. So, I think he's been given a nice amount of rope, and now it's up to him to, either lasso some wins or, that's going to be the end of the road. So, we're all rooting for him to do well, because we respect him and respect the way that he does things. And he's not alone in that regard, but he does seem kind of to be a unique person in a very unique game. And you hope that uniqueness can continue to shine through and not get overran by NIL talk and those types of things. But, he's got to go win, bottom line.
Got to go win. By the way, the latest update from Kansas City with that Super Bowl parade that ended with the shooting, 8 children among the 22 wounded by gunfire. There are people in custody, but the one person, at least at this time, was killed. There's a video of all hell breaking loose and a couple of just normal fans chasing down one of the alleged shooters and tackling them and getting him to the ground before others eventually were able to, I guess, put him in cuffs or whatever it was. It's pretty amazing what they did. All right. Emery Winter, thank you. Garrett Ross, Jack McKenzie, Craig Smoak, and Paul Catalina. Our sponsors, thank you every day. Those in the chat room, those in the text line, and also those who don't do either one of those but watch or listen to us. We appreciate you every day. I'm David Smoak. Sports Tonight, 365 Sports Tonight at 10:30 on the CW. Good night.